Chapter 1294. Xiaoqun waved his hand. He didn't take such a small thing to heart. He just felt that these girls were really broad-minded. Their lives were obviously at stake, but they still had the time to consider whether they were deceived by him. Women's thoughts were really unusual. By the way, Xiaoqun, how's the problem with your place? Can it be solved? Now you have so many girlfriends. What if it can't be used at a critical moment? Lan Xinxin suddenly patted her forehead and asked with concern. Lan Xinxin just remembered that she had broken Xiaoqun's little brother before. Although she had taken Xiaoqun to the hospital for a checkup, she was still a little worried. Thank you for your concern. I'll tell you solemnly again. I'm fine. You really don't have to feel too guilty. Xiaoqun replied with a wry smile. He thought that Lan Xinxin's memory was too good. It had been so long, but she could still remember it. Really? I still don't believe it. I heard that it's difficult to recover from being crushed. How did you do it? Lan Xinxin held her chin and asked suspiciously. Although Lan Xinxin's voice was not loud, all the women present heard it clearly. Their gazes immediately focused on them. Some were curious, some were puzzled, and some were secretly thinking that these two people were too unrestrained. Wasn't it just exercising? How could they be so intense that they broke that place? Xiaoqun opened his mouth and found that Lan Xinxin's question was really difficult to answer. He was speechless. He couldn't just say that he was a cultivator and could heal no matter how serious the injury was, right? That would be too shocking. With Lan Xinxin's character of getting to the bottom of things, she must see it with her own eyes to believe it. Xiaoqun, don't be embarrassed. Since I have promised to take care of you for a lifetime, I naturally won't break my promise. Lan Xinxin tilted her head and thought for a while. Suddenly, she snapped her fingers and smiled mysteriously. How about this? Let me check it myself and make sure that there's really no problem. Then I can rest assured. No need. I'm really fine. The women's gazes made Xiaoqun feel uneasy. He quickly refused and shook his head like a rattle. I say, you're a man. Why are you so shy? You see, I don't care about this. Lan Xinxin curled her lips and blinked with interest. She glanced at a certain part of Xiaoqun's body with an eager look on her face. Hee, little sister Xinxin, I originally thought that I was already bold and unrestrained enough. I didn't expect you to be even better than me, wanting to take off Xiaoqun's pants in broad daylight. I really admire you from the bottom of my heart. Xie Fei covered her mouth and laughed, not forgetting to tease her. Xiaoqun was sweating profusely. He said helplessly, Consort Xie, stop causing trouble. It's not what you think it is, T. Xie Kama-chen said, T and said, T Xiaoqun say. Are Xiao, and Xiao. How come I've never heard you mention it before? Don't you think you should introduce them? The one who spoke was Yi Xiaoya. At this moment she was obviously a little jealous. Although she didn't object to Xiaoqun having multiple wives and concubines, she had just reunited with Xiaoqun after a long time and saw so many outstanding beauties surrounding him. Moreover, whether it was in terms of temperament or appearance, they were all top-notch, rich and beautiful. Therefore, she couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable and even faintly feel a sense of crisis. Well, let's go into the room and talk. It's weird to stand under the sun with so many people. Xiaoqun squeezed out a smile and said with difficulty. He then led the way to Xinggirl's room. Xiaoqun also didn't expect that the girls who were related to him would actually gather together at the same time by a freak combination of factors. Needless to say, the scene of so many beautiful girls standing together was simply too pleasing to the eye, too spectacular. The girls were naturally aware of Xiaoqun's awkwardness, but since Xiaoqun didn't point it out, they naturally wouldn't point it out. After all, they were going to be good sisters in the future. There was no need to fall out with each other just because of the competition for his favor. Jean Beibei followed the girls and pulled Qing Menjing's arm. She said to her in a low voice, Cousin Menjing, Beibei has a bad feeling. It seems that Yi Xiaoye and my cousin-in-law are already in a relationship beyond friendship. I'm afraid you won't be his first wife anymore. Beibei, what are you talking about? I don't want to be Xiaoqun's first wife at all. Whoever wants it can go. Qing Menjing rolled her eyes proudly, but she still looked at Xiaoqun's direction subconsciously, feeling somewhat anxious. Was she really not as good as other people? I thought that after you became the first wife, Beibei would also be able to bask in the glory and enjoy life, commanding these beautiful girls to work for me. Now it seems that it is impossible. Jean Beibei pouted and mumbled gloomily, her face full of disappointment. That's enough of you. Go and daydream. Qing Menjing poked Jean Beibei's head angrily and did not bother to talk to her anymore. The girl's head was full of nonsense. She'd better not talk to her anymore in case she got sick because of her anger. After he returned to his room, Xiaochen had no time to take a rest. It took him more than 2 hours to describe his experience after he left the Xiao family. Because the story was too complicated and bizarre, a few simple-minded girls could not help but feel amazed after they heard it. Some of them, on the other hand, were secretly thinking that they had to seize the time and further develop their relationship with Xiaochen as soon as possible. Otherwise, with so many beautiful girls around Xiaochen in the future, it was possible that their position would be replaced by someone else. While the girls were making their own plans, Xiaochen did not think too much about it. He felt that now that he had successfully rescued Lu Shuangshuang and the other girls, what he needed to do next was to enter the world of immortality as soon as possible to search for and rescue his father, Xiao Feng, as well as Cheng Minjing's uncle and Tang Tang's parents. Xiaochen recalled that the bull had also mentioned that there were as many experts in the world of immortality as there were clouds in the sky. His capability might be on par with those inside. Therefore, he estimated that it would be extremely dangerous. It seemed that he had to keep a low profile after he entered the world of immortality and avoid head-on clashes with the strong cultivators. Otherwise, he would be at a disadvantage. The next morning, Xiaochen came to the meeting room with Miss Xing, together with Gong Sun Yen. The three of them sat down and waited for Song Weizong and the bull to come for the meeting. Chapter 1295. Last night, Xiaochen wanted to improve his strength with the help of dual cultivation. He thought that there was strength in numbers. He did not expect that after one night of cultivation, the girls who accompanied him in dual cultivation had all leveled up. However, there was no sign of a breakthrough at all. He could not help but feel a little annoyed. The Immortal Cultivation World's sacrificial ceremony was just around the corner. Xiaochen really wanted to increase his strength before entering the Immortal Cultivation World, so that he would have a better ability to protect himself. Unfortunately, the method of dual cultivation was not very effective for him. Xiaochen also wanted to use the natural treasures he had obtained in the Venerable Realm to level up. Unfortunately, he did not have much time left. Moreover, the natural treasures that he had collected were of extremely high quality or mutated. Even the Elder Heaven Ancestor did not know how to use them. In order to avoid creating of 4 odd beasts, Xiaochen had no choice but to give up this option. It seemed that he could only take it one step at a time from now on. Hello, exalted immortal Xiao. You're so early. I didn't expect that I would still be a little later than you. Shishan Giant Bull pushed the door open and smiled at Xiaochen. In fact, in order to leave a good impression on Xiaochen, Shishan Giant Bull had deliberately left the house 30 minutes earlier. He did not expect that Xiaochen would arrive earlier than him. In the end, he did not manage to flatter Xiaochen. Song Weizong followed behind Shishan Giant Bull into the meeting room and smiled at Xiaochen. Ah Jian, my young friend, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. When he was behind Shishan Giant Bull, he heard this guy call him Exalted Immortal Xiao. He was a little puzzled. He thought that there were other people in the meeting room today. However, after entering, Song Weizong looked around the room and did not see any strangers. He could not help but wonder who this Shishan Giant Bull was calling just now. Wait, today's meeting is attended by important people. Unrelated people are not allowed to enter. Ridiculous. I, Song Qingshu, am the 3rd-generation heir of the dignified Song family. Why can't you let me in? Tisk, Song Qingshu, who do you think you are? Even I, Mad Demon, can only stay outside and not enter, let alone a little bastard like you. You. Xiaochen was about to preside over the meeting when a loud noise suddenly came from outside the door. Everyone looked at each other. It seemed that Song Qingshu also wanted to come in and participate in the meeting, but he was unexpectedly stopped by the guards and was also ridiculed by Mad Demon of West Mountain. Xiaochen's expression didn't change. Shishan Yo looked askance at Song Weizong and clicked its tongue. Song Weizong's expression didn't look good. Just as he was about to stand up and go out to see the situation, the door of the conference room was suddenly pushed open. Song Qingshu walked in angrily, followed by an anxious and angry guard. Song Qingshu pushed the guard aside and scanned everyone present. When she saw Xiaochen, she suddenly paused, pointed at him and yelled, "Xiaochen! You actually dared to let the guard stop me outside the door. Do you not put our cultivation sects in your eyes at all? This is simply going too far. What's going on? Isn't there a sign outside that says no trespassers and dogs are allowed in? Are you illiterate? Why did you come in? When did you have the right to participate in such a high-end meeting?" Xiaochen was not angered at all. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his legs on the table as he spoke calmly. "That's right. I say, old ghost Song, How do you usually teach the younger generation of the family? He has no manners at all and actually dares to openly oppose Immortal Xiao. I think that kid is tired of living. Since your family's rules are not strict, why don't I help you discipline him? Shishan Yo also grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth, and sneered at Song Weizong. Song Weizong ignored Shishan Yo's provocation and turned around. He glared at Song Qingshu and said angrily, Qingshu, did you take the wrong medicine? Why did you come in so early in the morning? Hurry up and get out. Grandpa, don't be fooled by that kid Xiaoqin. He is the Xiaoqin that I mentioned to you before. Moreover, he doesn't have any strength at all. He only knows some evil magic and clings to the thigh of Qi Tian sect. He's just using their background to intimidate others. Song Qingshu was also anxious as he pointed at Xiaoqin and shouted. He really didn't understand why his grandpa was so respectful to Xiaoqin. He was clearly a scumbag. Song Weizong was shocked when he heard this. He didn't expect Jian and Xiaoqin to be the same person. Why didn't Song Qingshu make things clear earlier? This was big trouble. Damn it. How dare you speak so arrogantly? Shishan Yo's face darkened when he saw the Song family talking among themselves and ignoring him. He felt that his dignity had been insulted. Shishan Giant Yak's body immediately emitted a black aura. It turned to Xiaoqin and said respectfully, Exalted Immortal Xiao, since the Song family's brat doesn't know how to appreciate favors and is actually disrespectful to you, please allow me to help you teach this junior a lesson. I'll let him know the price of disrespecting his elders. Shishan Yo, do you dare to try? Seeing that Shishan Yo was ready to attack, Song Weizong didn't dare to be negligent. His body shook and he quickly revealed the cultivation of the Venerable Peak, staring at him seriously. Although Song Weizong didn't understand why Shishan Yo was standing up for Xiaoqin, Song Qingshu was the future star of his family. No matter what mistakes he made, he should be punished by his family. He couldn't let Shishan Yo succeed. All right, all of you stop for a while. Xiaoqin waved his hand and stopped them impatiently. I don't have time to argue with a moron. Don't shout about fighting and killing so easily. Sit down and get ready for the meeting. This is the real business today. Shishan Yo immediately put away the black aura, turned to bow to Xiaoqin and said respectfully, Immortal Xiao is really magnanimous. You are so kind and tolerant to ignorant juniors. I admit my defeat. Xiaoqin snorted and ignored him. He turned to Song Qingshu and said, Song Qingshu, are you going to walk out by yourself, or do you want me to send you out like last time? If it weren't for Song Huawu, Xiaoqin wouldn't have been so polite to Song Qingshu. It wouldn't have mattered if Shishan Yo had taught him a lesson. However, this guy was still his brother-in-law after all. He was also Song Huawu's biological brother, so there was no need to make their relationship so stiff. Xiaoqin, my little friend, please give me some face and let me take him out. I will definitely teach him a good lesson and not let him make such a rash mistake again. Song Weizong's expression changed slightly, and he pleaded before Song Qingshu could. Chapter 1296. Although Song Weizong did not know what method Xiaoqin was going to use, Song Qingshu had finally made up his mind to apologize to him. In the end, he came back angrily and smashed cups and bowls. It must not be a comfortable way. Song Weizong saw Xiaoqin nod slightly, so he immediately pulled Song Qingshu out and walked out. Song Weizong pulled Song Qingshu out of the conference room and scolded him. He ordered him to wait outside the door and not to leave. Then he suppressed his anger, took a deep breath, turned around and walked into the conference room. He did not forget to close the door on his way out. Song Qingshu and West Mountain Mad Devil stared at each other outside the meeting room. After a long time, they both snorted and turned their heads to ignore each other. Okay, let's start the meeting. After Song Weizong sat down, Xiaoqin knocked on the table and said in a deep voice, The content of today's meeting is actually very simple. You two sects will first tell us the method and steps to open the gate to the world of Immortal. Then we will discuss it and design a reasonable and safe plan. Then we will implement it together. Is there any problem? Song Weizong and West Mountain Mad Bull shook their heads in unison, indicating that they had no objection. Anyway, they had been mentally prepared, so they were not surprised. Xiaoqin nodded in satisfaction. Then he said, You can start speaking now. Who will go first? I will go first. Song Weizong and West Mountain Mad Bull shouted in unison. They looked at each other and saw the hatred in each other's eyes. Both sides wanted to speak first, but in the end the decision was handed to Xiaoqin. After all, he was the strongest among the people present and could be regarded as the leader of the organization to enter the world of Immortal. While Xiaochen was thinking about who should speak first, West Mountain Mad Bull had an idea. He took out a tattered book and quickly flipped through it. He did not forget to add, "Immortal Xiao, don't listen to old devil songs nonsense. He doesn't know how to open the gate to the world of Immortal at all. This ancient book of mine has been handed down from ancient times. It clearly records the details." Ridiculous. How could I not know? Song Weizong didn't want to be outdone. While Shishan Giant Bull was busy flipping through the book, Song Weizong quickly said, "The ceremony in the cultivation world is actually very simple. You just need to gather some women with spiritual qi, then make a simple teleportation array, and then use the spiritual qi in these women to open the teleportation door to the cultivation world." In the past few days, Song Weizong stayed in the Awakening Heaven Gate and had nothing else to do. He had been reading the scrolls left behind by the immortal cultivation sects, so he knew the method to open the immortal cultivation world like the back of his hand. Unfortunately, because the ancient book had been placed for too long, many details were missing, but the main part was still complete. Old Ghost Song, don't talk nonsense. Sacrificial offerings are nothing simple. Shishan Giant Bull's eyes widened. He pointed to a page in the ancient book and said, "Immortal Xiao, it is clearly written here that when a woman uses spiritual qi to open the portal to the world of cultivation, it is very likely to trigger a heavenly tribulation." Heavenly tribulation? What heavenly tribulation? You're not just spouting nonsense, are you? Song Weizong asked in surprise. Then he took out the scroll from his arms and carefully looked at the relevant records. However, several of the words were already blurred, and he couldn't see the content of heavenly tribulation at all. Of course what I said is true. Shishan Giant Bull snorted and explained in a reasonable manner, "The power of heavenly tribulation is very great. If there is a little carelessness, those women with spiritual qi will die because of it, so we still have to be more careful." Shishan Giant Bull explained the part about heavenly tribulation in detail. What kind of heavenly tribulation is it, and what kind of power will it cause? Xiao Chen's expression sank slightly and he frowned and asked. Originally, Xiao Chen was already quite unwilling to let Lu Shuangshuang and the others take the risk. If by any chance this sacrificial ritual would put their lives in danger, then he would definitely not agree to use this method. At worst, he would just find another way. About that. Shishan Giant Bull's mouth twitched violently, and he stuttered for a long time but couldn't say anything. It wasn't that he didn't want to say it, but in the ancient book he had, the part about the detailed explanation of heavenly tribulation had long been damaged. He could no longer distinguish any text, so he couldn't sell it even if he wanted to. "Haha, I have this." Song Weizong was overjoyed. He immediately flipped the scroll to a certain page and read the words on it. It's like this. During the opening of the portal to the world of immortals, there may be all kinds of weather changes. Those women with spiritual qi will need to resist the wind, rain, and even hail and lightning. This must be the heavenly tribulation. Are you serious? Old Ghost Song, are you purposely making things up just to say a few more sentences? Shishan Giant Bull had a suspicious look on his face. Isn't it just wind and rain? At most there will be some hail. How can there be any danger? And it will even cause the death of the women with spiritual qi? I don't believe it. Your ghost cultivation sect has been hiding in a dark corner for a long time, so of course you wouldn't know about these things. Song Weizong snorted coldly and revealed a proud look on his face. He then turned to Xiao Chen and asked, "I wonder if my friend Xiao Chen has been to the honored mysterious realm?" Seeing that Xiao Chen nodded, Song Weizong began to speak frankly with assurance. The heavenly tribulation is similar to the 5 elements tribulation in the honored mysterious realm. Although it is only a change in the weather, it is very powerful. Therefore, when the time comes, the more women with spiritual qi participate in the sacrificial ceremony, the better. In this way, the burden on each woman will be lighter. After finishing speaking, Song Weizong felt that he had regained some ground. He was very happy as he stroked his beard. Although there was no detailed information about the heavenly tribulation in his scroll, it happened to record the tribulation that the women with spiritual qi would encounter. This kind of tribulation was similar to the 5 elements tribulation, but its power was several times stronger than the 5 elements tribulation. 5 elements tribulation? Xiao Chen's heart moved. If it was the 5 elements tribulation, could he help to resist it? If he could also help, it should be foolproof. In order to verify his thoughts, Xiao Chen confirmed with Song Weizong again. Then, when the time comes, as long as we work together to resist the heavenly tribulation, we can successfully open the portal to the cultivation world, right? Yes, yes, yes. After the heavenly tribulation is over, the portal will open automatically. At that time we can enter the cultivation world. Song Weizong nodded repeatedly. Xiao Chen continued to ask, in that case, apart from the women with spiritual qi who participate in the sacrificial ceremony, if other people want to help share the damage caused by the heavenly tribulation, is it possible? Chapter 1297. Song Weizong did not expect that Xiao Chen would suddenly ask such a question. He could not help but be stunned. He immediately lowered his head to look at the information in the scroll. After looking for a long time, he still said with a depressed face, "This? As for whether outsiders can bear it together, there is no record in the scroll. I think, what do you think? Of course you can let others bear it together. Otherwise, those girls, if any of the girls with spiritual qi is not strong enough, they will definitely die." Shishan Giant Bull immediately retorted. Fearing that Xiao Chen would not believe it, Shishan Giant Bull handed the ancient book to Xiao Chen respectfully and pointed out the part related to this paragraph to him. The reason why Shishan Giant Bull did this was naturally because he had another reason. He guessed that Xiao Chen must have taken a fancy to Lu Shuang and the other girls. Yesterday Xiao Chen was so anxious to bring them over. After that, they must have been very intimate. At this time, Xiao Chen certainly did not want them to die in the sacrificial ceremony. He wanted to keep all of them as his wives. Otherwise, why would he be willing to take the initiative to take the risk and bear the heavens test? Well, if the records in this ancient book are correct, then things will be much easier. Xiao Chen did not care about Shishan Giant Bull's little plan. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the ancient book. Although many of the single pages were damaged, at least he could understand most of the content about the heavens test. According to the ancient book, the heavens test was randomly generated. Every time a sacrificial ceremony was carried out, only one type of heavens test would be generated. There would not be all types of heavens test. This also gave Xiao Chen a little more confidence. At this moment, Song Weizong looked at Shishan Giant Bull and then looked at Xiao Chen. He was a little puzzled. He wondered why Shishan Giant Bull suddenly became so respectful to Xiao Chen. Could it be that they had reached some kind of conspiracy? Thinking of how Shishan Mad Devil was beaten so badly by Xiao Chen before, Shishan Giant Bull should be looking for him to settle the score. Now it had become such a lackey. It was obviously a little unreasonable. However, Song Weizong could not think of a reason for the two sides to cooperate in such a short period of time. He could only shake his head slightly and temporarily suppress this idea. After reading the ancient books of the Ghost Cultivation sect, Xiao Chen roughly understood the ins and outs. Presumably, the records passed down by the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect were incomplete, so the method of offering sacrifices was somewhat vague. Fortunately, the two sides could complement each other and perfect the whole process. Otherwise, he would still be in the dark and not know many details. After returning the ancient book to the Shishan Giant Bull, Xiao Chen knocked on the table and asked, "How are the preparations for the sacrificial ritual going? Are there any heavenly materials and earthly treasures that the Awakening Heaven sect needs to provide? After all, our three parties are in a cooperative relationship. I can't just take advantage of you and do nothing, right? Little friend Xiao Chen, you don't have to worry about this. Our Immortal Cultivation sect is almost ready." Song Weizong waved his hand and said with a smile, "It's just that, we're still missing a few things. We've been looking for those things for many years, but we haven't found any trace of them, including the 100-year-old Ianwood vine, the evil orchid tree root." Every time Song Weizong reported a material, he would look at the Shishan Giant Bull. Both of them knew very well that these things were very suitable for the cultivation of evil cultivators because they were full of Yin Qi. Therefore they were controlled by the Ghost Cultivation sect all year round and were extremely rare on the market. Old Ghost Song, originally, I wouldn't have taken out these treasures so easily. The Shishan Giant Bull cackled and said slowly, "But for the sake of Immortal Xiao, I'm willing to provide them for free this time. After all, what Immortal Xiao said just now was what I was thinking. This time, it's a three-way cooperation. We can't be too selfish." In fact, the Shishan Giant Bull looked very generous on the surface. In fact, he had already collected most of the treasures of heaven and earth. He just lacked some materials that only the Immortal Cultivation sect had. Therefore, when he heard what Song Weizong said, he simply pushed the boat with the current and made himself look very generous. Umph. Song Weizong snorted coldly. He picked up the cup on the table and took a sip of tea. He was too lazy to care about the Shishan Giant Bull's smug face. "Very good. Since there are no problems with the sacrificial method and materials, then next, let's discuss the allocation of people to enter the immortal cultivation world. Seeing that there was really nothing that he needed to do, Xiaoqin didn't say anything more. He nodded and moved on to the next topic. The Xishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong immediately focused their attention. The number of people entering the immortal cultivation world was the most important thing in this meeting. Therefore, they didn't want to be distracted for even a moment. Xiaoqin looked down at the last few pages of the ancient book. He pointed at a line of words and said, "This ancient book records that every time the portal to the immortal cultivation world is opened, at most 20 to 30 people can enter. I believe that's the number on sect leader Song's scroll, right?" After Song Weizong confirmed it, Xiaoqin looked at the two of them and asked with a smile, "So, how many people are you going to send in this time?" Xiaoqin had just learned from the ancient book that although the opening of the immortal cultivation world required a woman with extremely high spiritual qi, there was no level limit for entering the immortal cultivation world. Even ordinary people without any cultivation could enter. After reading this, Xiaoqin really understood why Gong Sanyan had sent Sidu Qitian to capture people everywhere to do experiments. He didn't even let the ordinary cultivators of the outer martial arts world and the secular world go. It was because he wanted to mass-produce biohumans and then send them to the immortal cultivation world to investigate the situation. The exalted immortal Shao, we have a lot of people in the ghost cultivation sect. There may be more than 10 places. Do you think it's convenient for us to go in first? The giant bull smiled and hurriedly added, "We can go in first. We can also help you explore the way. If there's any danger, we can also inform you in advance." From the giant bull's point of view, as long as the people he arranged could enter, the rest of the places could be divided between the immortal cultivation sect and Xiaoqin. There was nothing for him to do. "How can we do that?" Without waiting for Xiaoqin to speak, Song Weizong immediately rejected the Xishan giant bull's suggestion. He said coldly, "When the time comes, your ghost cultivation sect will be able to enter without any trouble, leaving only our immortal cultivation sect and little friend Xiaoqin. Each side will only be able to send a few people in. Wouldn't that be a great loss for us?" "I definitely don't agree." Song Weizong was not stupid. The immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect had been fighting for so many years. Even if they sat together and prepared to enter the immortal cultivation world together now, they would still be enemies after entering. Since that was the case, Song Weizong naturally wanted to fight for a few more places for the immortal cultivation sect. He didn't want to be suppressed by the people of the ghost cultivation sect after entering. "Damn, I'm discussing with exalted immortal Shao. What does it have to do with you? What do you want to do by jumping around so happily?" The giant bull was a little embarrassed after being rejected. He slammed the table heavily and glared at Song Weizong. Chapter 1298. Why does it have nothing to do with me? This sacrificial ceremony is a collaboration between 3 parties. Apart from my little friend Xiaoqin, the opinions of the immortal cultivation sects are also very important. We also need more than a dozen places. Song Weizong did not back down and expressed his opinion loudly. Xishan Giant Bull stood up and stared at Song Weizong with an evil smile. "More than a dozen places? You really dare to say that? You immortal cultivation sects are all a bunch of trash. It's useless even if you go in. You might as well give up the places and give them to immortal Zhao's people." At this point, Xishan Giant Bull did not forget to turn to Xiaoqin and squeeze out a smile. "Am I right, immortal Xiao?" "Right my ass." Song Weizong could not stand Xishan Giant Bull's flattery. He could not help but scold angrily. "We immortal cultivation sects have more spiritual women than you ghost cultivation sects. Why do you want to reduce our places? As for you ghost cultivation sects, what's the use of so many people going in? After you gain strength, you will still come back to harm the internal martial arts world. *CKU. If it weren't for your immortal cultivation sects provoking us every time, we ghost cultivation sects would not even bother to compete with you. Do you really think I like to fight with you, old fart? You dare to scold me? Xishan Giant Bull, I think you are tired of living today. Cut the crap. Strength is everything. Let's just fight. Whoever wins will be able to obtain more spots. Good. I have long been annoyed by you, old fart. You are always putting on airs and putting on a sanctimonious appearance. No matter how I look at you, you are asking for a beating. Today it's either you die or I live. Let's see who is stronger. As soon as he finished speaking, Xishan Yo immediately circulated his mental cultivation method, and Song Weizong also stood up abruptly. His entire body shook as he revealed his cultivation. The two of them glared at each other angrily, looking as though they were ready to draw their swords. The atmosphere in the conference room suddenly became somewhat heavy, and a fight could break out at any moment. All right. You are all hundreds of years old. Why are you more hot-tempered than me? Hurry up and sit down. Xiao Qin waved his hand impatiently. He couldn't be bothered to look at the two of them. When Shishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong heard Xiao Qian's words, they slightly retracted their auras. However, they still stared at each other cross-eyed. Neither of them moved, and neither of them was willing to take the lead to sit down. What's wrong? My words don't work, do they? Do you want me to treat you guys again? Xiao Qin glared at them and released a pressure that was as dense as a mountain, sweeping toward the two of them. Xiao Qin was really speechless at these two old fellows who were fighting with each other. If it weren't for the fact that these two people were still useful, he would have already slapped them one by one and sent them both flying. Feeling Xiao Qian's anger, Shishan Yo and Song Weizong trembled slightly and obediently sat down on their chairs. They did not dare to openly make an enemy out of Xiao Qin. After all, his strength was too heaven-defying. Moreover, the two of them were not really going to fight. They were just using this kind of hostile attitude to express how much importance their sex placed on the quota this time. After all, no one knew how many people could enter the array that was opened by the priest. The range of the number recorded in the ancient books was also very different. Everyone wanted to fight for as many spots as possible for their own sections. That was why they joined forces, and put on a posture of fighting for every inch of land. How about this? Xiao Qin knocked on the ancient book in front of him and said indifferently, since the ancient book mentioned that 20 to 30 people can enter, then let's count it as 30 people. The Awakening sect, the Immortal Cultivation sect, and the Ghost Cultivation sect, the three sects will cooperate and distribute the quota equally. Each sect will have 10 spots. Isn't that enough? What's the point of arguing here and there? Exalted Immortal Xiao, I think equal distribution is a bit unreliable? Shishan Yo said with a bitter face, although the ancient book recorded that it is correct, what if only 20 people can enter? At that time, wouldn't the last sect to enter suffer a great loss? Indeed, and Song Weizong frowned and hesitated for a moment. He still looked at Xiao Qin and said, Forgive me for being presumptuous, little friend Xiao Qin, in this Immortal Cultivation World Sacrificial Ceremony, Awakening sect did not make any contribution. If they just get 10 spots, it seems a bit. Anyway, I don't think this distribution method is very reasonable. Shishan Yo also felt that what Song Weizong said was very right. To put it bluntly, Awakening sect only had Xiao Qin who was relatively strong, so they could forcefully gather all of them together. They could also use this opportunity to divide up a few spots. However, if they wanted to evenly distribute the number of people with the Ghost Cultivation sect and the Immortal Cultivation sect, it was indeed a bit unreasonable. However, Shishan Yo only agreed in his heart and did not say anything on the surface. He was not willing to risk offending Xiao Qin and go along with old Ghost Song, so he chose to wait and see. Who told you that Awakening sect has no contribution? Xiao Qin squinted at Song Weizong and said calmly, I also have a few spiritual energy women around me. They can participate in the sacrificial ceremony and greatly increase the success rate. Shouldn't such a great contribution be counted as Awakening sect's account? This. Song Weizong was stunned. He was immediately choked and speechless. Although he didn't know where Xiao Qian's so-called spiritual chi woman came from, if he really did have the goods, then the three sects could really share it equally. After all, what Xiao Qin said was reasonable. If the sacrificial ceremony failed because there were not enough spiritual energy women, then what was the point of talking about the distribution of spots? Not a single person could get in. Shishan Yo, who originally planned to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, immediately had his face collapse. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. He subconsciously thought that Xiao Qin regarded Lu Shuangshuang and the other women as the spiritual energy women of Awakening sect. In this way, it was reasonable to use these women to help Awakening sect get a few more spots. Shishan Yo couldn't speak of his bitterness. He wanted to slap himself. This was all his own sin. Okay, don't talk about this and that. Each sect will get 10 spots. This matter is settled. Xiao Qin slapped the table and made a conclusion. Then, he gently pushed the ancient book on the table, stood up and said, Go back now and finalize the list of people to enter the world of cultivation. I will review it later. Shishan Yo still wanted to say something, but Xiao Qin didn't give him a chance to speak. He directly waved his hand and said, All the topics have been settled. There is nothing else. Today's meeting is adjourned. After that, Xiaoqun didn't wait for Xishan Niu and Song Weizong to express their opinions. He directly left the meeting room with Xing Niu and Gong Sun Yen. Xiaoqun was too lazy to argue with the two of them. Anyway, he had already decided on the matter. If the two of them were still not satisfied, then let them fight among themselves. Chapter 1299. Looking at Xiaoqun's departing figure, Xishan Niu and Song Weizong's expressions were extremely helpless. The two of them looked at each other and could see the unwillingness in each other's eyes, but there was nothing they could do about Xiaoqun. Although Xishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong also wanted to snatch the places from each other's hands, according to their many years of experience, it would definitely end in vain in the end, so they didn't want to make a meaningless and futile attempt. They could only sigh and leave the conference room one after another. They all wanted to go back as soon as possible to gather people, screen them, and then determine the disciples to enter the cultivation world, lest Xiaoqun changed his mind again. After Xishan Giant Ox went back, he was worried. Although their ghost cultivation sect had a large number of people, and this time he deliberately brought all the elite disciples who were selected to enter the cultivation world. As a result, when he went to settle accounts with Xiaoqun, they were all killed by the strange flying sword, so there was a huge gap. In desperation, the giant bull of Xishan and the mad demon of Xishan discussed for a long time. They even asked the mad demon of Xishan to issue a recruitment order. They spent a lot of effort to gather all the evil cultivators in the outer martial arts world and the secular world, just to find a few good evil cultivators to enter the world of immortal cultivation when selecting people. As for the number of people in the immortal cultivation sect, there were not so many. After Song Weizong went back, he called Hong Dingwei family patriarch Hong and discussed it. They also chose to gather the cultivators of other small sections. After gathering them together, they would choose the best talents and entrust them with important tasks. After Xiaoqun returned, he also found the women and discussed the candidates to enter the cultivation world. Elder Sun and Gong Sun Yen listened on the side. Originally, the women planned to go with him, but when they learned that there were only 10 places, they had no choice but to give up the idea and began to discuss who would accompany Xiaoqun to enter the cultivation world. Xiaoqun glanced at the girls. Although most of their eyes were filled with anticipation, Xiaoqun couldn't bear to bring them to take risks when he thought of the dangerous environment in the immortal cultivation world where experts were as common as clouds. After thinking for a while, Xiaoqun couldn't make a decision, so he simply changed the topic. He looked at Ling Qianxue and asked, "By the way, Qianxue, you and Ling already know that you are a spiritual energy woman, right?" Ling Qianxue nodded obediently and replied, "Sister Hongzhu has already told us that Sister Ling Sister Tang Tang and I are all women with spiritual qi, so we can also participate in the sacrificial ceremony in the cultivation world. When the time comes, I'll need all three of you to participate in the ceremony. But don't worry, I'll be there the entire time. I can definitely guarantee your safety," Xiaoqun said with a smile. It turned out that when Xiaoqun mentioned in the meeting that he was also a woman with spiritual qi, he didn't count Lu Shuangshuang and the other girls as his own as the giant bull of West Mountain thought. Instead, he really had Ling Qianxue and Tang Tang. Although Xiaoqun didn't know why these three people had spiritual qi in them, but Tian Suruan, Jin Beibei, and the others didn't, Hongzhu told him with certainty that he was not mistaken. When Xiaoqun found out that the danger brought about by the sacrificial ceremony was the heavenly tribulation, he thought of letting the three of them participate in the sacrificial ceremony as well. After all, he would be there to protect them so nothing would go wrong. Moreover, the ancient books also said that the more spiritual energy women participated in the ceremony, the greater the chance of activating the magic formation, and the less damage the heavens test would cause. In that case, why not put all the people who could be of use in it? Tang Tang, Ling and Ling Qianxue naturally had no objection. They all agreed. Before, Xiaoqun had already told them about the ceremony, so they were not worried or afraid. Instead, they felt happy that they could help Xiaoqun. As for the candidates to enter the world of cultivators, Xiaoqun had almost thought it over. He said, "So far, only the eldest lady and Tang Tang are relatively strong, and they can protect themselves after entering the world of cultivators. They don't need me to take care of them too much. As for the others, they might still be a little weak." "Xiaoqun, if I participate in the ceremony, will it be inconvenient for me to enter the world of cultivators?" Tang Tang asked with some concern. "What if I activate the magic formation and run into trouble?" "Don't worry, Tang Tang." Hongzhu chuckled delightfully and waved her hands. "The immortal cultivators have studied it. As long as the magic formation is activated, the spiritual energy women will be able to move freely. They don't have to stay in the ceremony all the time. It won't be a problem even if they want to enter the world of cultivators. It was not until then that Tang Tang put on a relieved smile. Xiaoqun was about to say something when his arm was suddenly grabbed. "Ouch, cousin Xiaoqun, I've just met you and cousin Menjing. Are we going to be separated again?" Jean Beibei shook Xiaoqun's arm in frustration. Cheng Menjing did not expect that Jean Beibei would run away from her when she was not paying attention. She hurried to shout, "Beibei, come back. Xiaoqun certainly has his own plans. You are too weak to go in. You'd better stay outside." Jean Beibei did not listen to Cheng Menjing and go back. Instead, she rolled her eyes and said with a sneaky smile, "Cousin-in-law, why don't you take me with you for duel training? In such a way I will be able to break into the Venerable very soon. Won't I be able to enter the world of immortal cultivators with you?" "Beibei, stop it." Cheng Menjing shook her head. Her tone turned solemn. "In order to break into the Venerable realm, you have to train in seclusion in the Venerable realm. But do we have that much time right now? Besides, you are a girl. How can you take off your clothes? Anyway, you can't." Although Cheng Menjing was a bit reluctant to leave, her main purpose right now was to find her second uncle, Cheng Zhongqian, in the world of immortal cultivators. Therefore she could only say goodbye to Jean Beibei for now. Also, no matter what, Cheng Menjing did not want Jean Beibei to participate in the duel training. Although Beibei often expressed her affection for Xiaoqun, Cheng Menjing did not want her to fall deeper and deeper into the relationship. Cheng Menjing was not being selfish. She did not want Jean Beibei and Xiaoqun to be together. It was just that no matter how she thought about it, she felt very awkward. That feeling was too strange. Jean Beibei was Xiaoqun's sister-in-law. How could she be with her cousin-in-law? "Cousin Menjing, I'm going to criticize you. You've tasted the sweetness yourself, and yet you are not willing to let me live a happy sex life too. Beibei is very disappointed with your way of doing things." Jean Beibei did not know what Cheng Menjing was thinking. She could only pout and mumble. "You." Cheng Menjing was rendered speechless. She simply rolled her eyes at Jean Beibei. Since she could not win an argument, she might as well ignore her in case she fell into another trap. Chapter 1300. Xiaoqun shook his head helplessly. In order not to deepen the misunderstanding between Cheng Menjing and Jean Beibei, he could only pat Jean Beibei's head softly and comfort her. "Beibei, just listen to your cousin and wait for us outside. As soon as we find my father and Uncle Cheng, we will come back for you immediately. By then I will take you to a delicious feast. How does that sound?" "All right then. Don't lie to me, cousin-in-law. Don't make Sister Jingxian and me wait for too long." Now that Xiaoqun had put it that way, Jean Beibei had no choice but to nod her head reluctantly. Xin Jingxian had complicated feelings at this moment too. She wanted to show that she was strong and independent, but she was sad that she was going to be separated from Xiaoqun again. Hearing that she was mentioned in Jean Beibei's words, she could not help but feel a bit moist. However, she still tried to control her emotions and did not let her tears flow out. "Rest assured. I'm a man of my words." Xiaoqun smiled at Jean Beibei. The moment he turned around, he found that Xin Jingxian was not quite right either. Therefore, he extended his hands and hugged her tightly, before he gave her a determined look. "Right, Xiaoqun, I did the math for you just now," Miss Xing suddenly said. "Since Hong Zhu and Consort Xie were brought here by the immortal cultivators, they should be counted in the quota. In such a case, only 3 of us are going, including you. What are we going to do with the rest of the quota?" "Well, about that." Xiaoqun was deep in thought again. There were still 7 quotas to go. It was not like he could send those who were not strong enough to make up the number, could he? That would be too much of a loss. "How about I go in and give you a hand too?" Miss Xing thought for a moment and added, "I am an expert of the Venerable Realm after all. I certainly won't cause you any trouble." "You don't have to go. The Open Heavens sect is still waiting for you to take care of." Before Xiaoqun finished, Elder Sun suddenly thought of something and interrupted him. That's right. Hero Xiao, isn't the Awakening Heaven sect still in a cooperative state with the 3 great clans? Since there are so many spots to enter the immortal cultivation world, can't we give one to the Awakening Heaven sect and the 3 major clans?" "Why are you asking so many questions? What does it have to do with you? Do you really want to get a share of the immortal cultivation world with your pathetic strength?" Xiaoqun glanced at him coldly and asked straightforwardly, Or could it be that you've already made an agreement with the three great clans in private to help them arrange for their people to enter as well and then gain some benefits from it? This elder son couldn't help but shiver. He stuttered for a long time but couldn't say anything. Although Xiao Chen's guess wasn't wrong, it wasn't far off. Originally, the cooperation between the Awakening Heaven sect and the three major clans included an agreement to send the people of the three major clans into the immortal cultivation world. Elder Sun was worried that he wouldn't be able to arrange people to enter. Now that there were 7 more spots, he thought of putting a few people from the three major clans in. However, looking at Xiao Chen's attitude, it seemed that it would be difficult for him to do so. Hero Xiao, don't blame me for talking too much. There are so many empty spots for no reason. Even if we don't use them, the people of the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect will definitely not let go of this big fat piece of meat. Gong Sun Yen cautiously persuaded, rather than letting them take advantage of it, we might as well use it as a favor and give it to the three major clans. Wouldn't this also further promote the friendship between the Awakening Heaven sect and the three major clans? Xiao Chen pondered for a moment and finally nodded slightly. That's right. Gong Sun Yen, don't you want to enter the immortal cultivation world? Then you should also go in with me. Is it really possible? Gong Sun Yan's face was full of joy. He was so excited that he was almost incoherent. Entering the immortal cultivation world had always been his dream. From the beginning when he tried to find out who was behind Xiao Qin, to the later biohuman project, all these were his efforts to enter the immortal cultivation world. Gong Sun Yen originally thought that after he repeatedly tried to kill Xiao Qin would definitely not allow him to enter the immortal cultivation world. He didn't expect that his wish would actually come true. What, steam or boil? If I tell you to go in, then go in. What's the point of saying so much? Xiao Qin glared at him and added, as for the remaining spots, let the three major clans first make a list and then send it to me for review. When the time comes, just wait for me to pick a few that are pleasing to my eyes. When the time comes, just go in with me. Many thanks, Hero Xiao. Then little son and I will not disturb you anymore. We will immediately issue a summon order to the three major clans and send the list to you as soon as possible. Gong Sun Yen managed to suppress his excitement. He bowed to Xiao Qin respectfully and left with Elder Sun at a brisk pace. Xiao Qin, I still think you should bring more masters with you. Otherwise it will be too dangerous. After Gong Sun Yen closed the door and left, Lan Xinxin suggested, why don't I call my brother and ask him to accompany you to the immortal cultivation world to find Uncle Xiao? Although he is not very smart, he has been very strong since he was a child. If you are in trouble, he can more or less help. Lan Xinxin grew up in the palm of Xiao Chen's hand, so she didn't know much about the martial arts world. In her mind, Wang Fantian was already a very powerful existence. Presumably, he could compete with the people in the immortal cultivation world. On the other hand, she was also thinking about Xiao Qin. She didn't want anything bad to happen to Xiao Chen in the immortal cultivation world. Thank you, Xinxin, but there is no need. The immortal cultivation world is actually not that dangerous. Moreover, Miss Xiao and Tang Tang are not weak. We can deal with any unexpected situation. Xiao Chen smiled and shook his head, declining Lan Xinxin's proposal. After thinking about it just now, Xiao Chen had already secretly decided that he would not let anyone else who was related to him get involved in this. This was to prevent him from making an irreversible mistake after entering the immortal cultivation world because of a moment of carelessness. Originally, Xiao Chen didn't even want to bring Qing Menjing and Tang Tang with him. He only planned to go in alone. However, the two women were very determined. It seemed that they would break up if he didn't bring them with him. So Xiao Chen had no choice but to agree. Speaking of Wang Fantian, although he had brute force, his cultivation was still too low. He was not even comparable to the cultivators in the martial arts world. Compared to the cultivators in the immortal cultivation world, he was not worth mentioning at all. If something happened to him in there, Xiao Chen would definitely feel guilty for the rest of his life. In addition, Xiao Chen had another plan. If the Jia family chose Jia Muzin and wanted him to enter the immortal cultivation world, he had to decisively cancel Jia Muzin's quota. After all, as his friend, Xiao Chen had to consider more. In the future, Wang Fantian would be the master of the Jia family and take care of the affairs of the Jia family. There was no need for him to take the risk of going to a dangerous and unpredictable place with him. Chapter 1301. As for who the other two families would choose, Xiao Chen did not care. Instead, he secretly hoped that they would report the names of Yu Dongxing and Tang Qianling, so that it would be convenient for him to kill these two fools in the world of immortal cultivators. If these two unstable factors were eliminated in advance, Jianghu would definitely be able to avoid a lot of trouble in the future. After Gong Sun Yin and Elder Sun returned, they respectively called the Jia family, the Tang family, and the Yu family, telling them that they could start to gather people and prepare to enter the world of immortal cultivators to explore. After receiving the order, the family heads of the three families immediately became nervous. One after another, they summoned their trusted subordinates to discuss or held a family meeting. The family heads of the Tang family and the Yu family had just returned from the transmitting array in the west of the Venerable Secret Realm. When they received the news, they unanimously thought that Qi Tian Sect's plan to summon everyone to enter the world of immortal cultivators was very unreliable. After all, they had fully participated in Sidu Qitian's cyborg plan. They had also watched Sidu Qitian and those cyborgs enter the world of immortal cultivators and even smashed the transmitting array. Since then there had been no news of Sidu Qitian and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. Although the family heads of the Tang family and the Yu family were very interested in entering the world of immortal cultivators, they did not have much hope in the uncertain future and unknown risks. The Jia family received the news from Jia Jinyan. When Jianghu returned from the transmitting array, he reported everything that had happened in the Venerable Secret Realm, as well as the collusion between Jia Yutian and Jia Yudo with Qi Tian Sect and the use of cyborgs to open the transmitting array. Although the family head was deeply disappointed with Jia Yuto and Jia Tuyao, he did not punish them out of reluctance to part with them. He just took back all the power in their hands and then left them alone. At this time, Jianghu was basically in charge of the Jia family. After Jia Jinyan received the summon order from Qi Tian Sect, he called Jianghu over and discussed it carefully with him. The two of them shared the same opinion as the other two clans. They were completely unprepared for this trip to the world of cultivators, and it was hard to predict whether they would be lucky or not. It was really not suitable for them to take the risk. It was better to find someone else to make up the numbers. However, Jia Jinyan and Jianghu had discussed this candidate for a long time. Jia Jinyan originally wanted to let Jia Renzhong participate, but Jianghu felt that there were too few people around him who could help. If Jia Renzhong left, he would be too busy, so he was unwilling to let him go. However, if he let Jia Tsugue and the others participate, then they would obviously be cannon fodder, and it would be too disrespectful to the gathering order. Just when the two of them were in a dilemma, Jia Yuto heard a rumor from somewhere and suddenly came to their door, claiming that he was willing to let his son, Jia Tuyao, sign up for the world of cultivation as a punishment and reflection for their wrongdoings. Although Jia Yuto spoke with certainty, and looked as if he was willing to die for the family, Jia Jinyan was old and shrewd, and had long seen through his little thoughts. After Jianghu handled the family affairs, he also began to get the hang of it. After thinking for a while, he understood Jia Yuto's purpose. After Jia Jinyan made Jia Yuto and his son a mere figurehead, the two of them had no right to speak in the Jia family. No matter what they said, no one would listen to them and they had no power. Their situation was even worse than Jianghu's before. For Jia Yuto and his son, who used to be held in the clouds, this was more painful than killing them. Therefore, after they heard the news, they decided to stake everything on one throw, and send Jia Tuyao to the world of cultivators to try his luck. If this kid really survived the disaster and became powerful, then when he returned with glory, wouldn't he be able to trample all the people of the Jia family under his feet? Although Jia Jinyan and Jianghu were well aware of Jia Yuto's plan, they didn't expose him. Anyway, it was indeed difficult to decide on the candidate. Jia Tuyao's strength was much higher than Jia Qinchu's. Even if he was sent to the Qi Tian sect, it wouldn't be too shabby. Moreover, Jianghu also thought that Jia Yuto and his son were sinister, and keeping Jia Tuyao alive would be a disaster. It was better to leave Jia Tuyao in the world of cultivators and let him run his own course. As for Jia Yuto, he couldn't cause any trouble if he was left here alone. Jia Jinyan was a little reluctant in his heart. After all, no matter how evil Jia Tuyao was, he was his grandson. However, Jia Yuto looked determined, and Jianghu didn't object, so Jia Jinyan didn't ask him to stay. In the end, he reluctantly agreed to Jia Yuto's proposal. The situation of the Tang family was completely different from that of the Jia family. Tang Qianling didn't have much interest in the world of cultivators, and he was not stupid. He didn't want to risk his life in the world of cultivators, so the candidate was still vacant. Tang Qianling and the family head of the Tang family discussed for a while and came up with a bad idea. They simply pretended to hold a family meeting and fair election. In the end, they voted to let Tang, an outsider, go to the world of cultivators. In their eyes, Tang was just an outsider. She died, then so be it. The Tang family wouldn't suffer any loss. Moreover, since Tang Tang wanted to go, Xiaochen would definitely go with her. If Tang Tang was lucky enough to come back alive, the Tang family might be able to get some useful information from her. As for Tang Tang's absence during the meeting, originally the meeting was attended by the core members of the family. How could she attend? She only needed to obey the order. The Jia family and the Tang family had decided on their candidates one after another. On the contrary, the Yu family was in a state of indecision. After all, the Yu family was relatively weak and they had very few experts. Although they were very eager to get the strength of the world of cultivators, the family head of the Yu family and Yu Dongxing didn't want to lose their lives in vain, so they didn't want to go. After picking and choosing from the list of the family's disciples, the family head of the Yu family and Yu Dongxing couldn't find a suitable candidate to enter the world of cultivators. For a moment they fell into a very contradictory situation. In the Yu family's meeting room, there were only 3 people sitting at the big round table. It looked very empty. "Grandfather, I think, why don't we not send anyone?" Yu Dongxing, who was sitting on the left, muttered to himself, "We still know nothing about the world of cultivators. We haven't found anything yet. If we just go in rashly, it'll be too dangerous. Besides, our Yu family doesn't have many experts to begin with. There's really no need for us to blindly get involved." "You're right." The family head of the Yu family sat on the main seat. His eyes emitted a shrewd light. "But as far as I know, the other 2 families in Awakening Heaven sect have already chosen people to enter when the time comes. If our Yu family pretends to know nothing about it or acts as if nothing happened, I'm afraid it won't be very appropriate." Chapter 1302. Family head Yu had lived for a long time, so he had naturally become a shrewd person. He was afraid that the cultivation world was not as scary as they thought it was. If the other sects took advantage of the cultivation world and nurtured many experts, then the Yu family's status would plummet. "Father, I understand what you mean, but we really can't find a suitable candidate." Yu Manchuan, Yu Dongxing's father, frowned and objected. "Besides, even if we go, it'll be useless. We haven't heard from Situ Qitian yet. I'm guessing he's long dead in the cultivation world. It's better for us to wait and see." Yu Manchuan had always been conservative, so he was not interested in risky things. He was also unwilling to waste the family's talents on this kind of unprofitable business. Sigh. Clan Master Yu sighed heavily and said hatefully, "Although our Yu clan does not have as many people and disciples as the other sects, we are still one of the 3 great clans of the inner martial arts world. Our reputation is definitely resounding. How could it be that we can't even find a single useful talent?" Overwhelmed with emotions, Old Master Yu unconsciously took out a cigarette from the box on the table and put it in his mouth. Just as he was about to light the cigarette with his lighter, he thought for a moment and put it down. With the unlit cigarette in his mouth, he closed his eyes and fell into a state of deep thought. Yu Manchuan was slightly stunned. He hesitated for a moment, but still picked up the lighter and lit the cigarette for family head Yu. He naturally knew that smoking was not good for cultivators, but his father did not smoke much. He would only smoke when he was anxious. Now was the time when family head Yu was most troubled. "Actually, I do have someone I can use." Yu Dongxing rolled his eyes and suddenly had an idea. A figure appeared in his mind. He immediately changed the topic and said, "But that guy is not a direct descendant of our Yu clan. He is not even a cultivator of the inner martial arts world. He's not from the Yu family, nor is he from the martial world. How can I use him? Dongxing, you're too much." Yu Manchuan's face darkened and he scolded softly. He even glared at Yu Dongxing. "Can't you see that your grandfather is worried? You're still talking nonsense." "Dad, let me finish." Yu Dongxing waved his hand and continued, "I heard that he has some ability. Although he is not from the inner martial arts world, he is still somewhat related to our Yu clan." "Dongxing, where did this man come from? Was he reliable? Would they do anything to harm the Yu clan?" The Yu family head's eyes widened and he puffed out a ring of smoke. He quickly extinguished the cigarette in his hand, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. "In theory, it's not very possible because he is the successor of the Yu clan in the secular world." Yu Dongxing replied, sneaking a glance at old Master Yu, afraid that the moment he heard that they were from the secular world, he would show dissatisfaction and opposition, and then directly reject them. "The bloodline connection between the Yu clan and us in the secular world is extremely thin. If you say it counts, then it counts. If you say it doesn't count, then it doesn't count either. This isn't too big of a problem. Clan Master Yu thought for a while, then asked, "You just said that he has some ability? What can he do?" Yu Dongxing saw that old Master Yu did not resist and was instead interested. He quickly continued, "Although he is in the secular world, his bloodline is definitely not that good. However, he seems to have cultivated an evil mental cultivation method. I don't know if it's because he is talented or because his mental cultivation method is outstanding, but his cultivation speed is very fast. I heard that his current cultivation level is extremely high, almost reaching the venerable realm." What? How could this be? How can someone from the secular world become a venerable one? Before old Master Yu could say anything, Yu Manchuan frowned and spoke first. Yu Dongxing rubbed his nose and answered awkwardly, I didn't say that he's already a venerable one, I only heard that he's close to one." Yu Manchuan snorted from his nostrils as if he was very disdainful of the Yu clan's branch family. With a calm face he said, "Dongxing, don't talk nonsense. The Yu clan's branch in the secular world were all trash. Apart from indulging in debauchery and indulging in a life of luxury, what else could they do? They're all a bunch of people who don't know how to improve, so how can they become venerable realm experts? Where did you get this information from?" "These are all reports from my spies. I didn't see it with my own eyes, so I don't dare to casually." Yu Dongxing only managed to explain half a sentence before he was interrupted by Yu Manchuan. "Do you even need to see it with your own eyes?" Yu Manchuan laughed coldly, mercilessly rejecting Yu Dongxing's suggestion. "Those cultivators in the secular world are all trash. Their mental cultivation methods are not even worth mentioning. How can we let these kinds of people replace the Yu clan to go to the cultivation world? If the other two clans in Qitian sect knew about this, where would our Yu clan's face go? This method is definitely not feasible." "Wait, Manchuan, don't rush to a conclusion." Clan Master Yu knocked on the table a few times, interrupting the agitated Yu Manchuan. He turned to Yu Dongxing and asked solemnly, "Dongxing, let's not talk about this person's cultivation for now. I just want to ask you, can you guarantee that you can control him and make him serve our Yu clan wholeheartedly?" "Grandfather, this shouldn't be a problem. When the time comes, I'll just tell him a lie and say that the leader of the martial world, Qitian sect, has opened a trial for him. All disciples of the clan, regardless of their background, can participate." Yu Dongxing scratched his chin and said after pondering for a while, "Oh. Then we'll report his name to elder son of Qitian sect and conveniently hide his identity as a loose cultivator from the secular world?" Clan Master Yu stroked his white beard and said thoughtfully. Yu Dongxing nodded excitedly and smiled evilly. "Anyway, his surname is Yu. When the time comes, everyone will be busy entering the cultivation world. Who will remember to investigate his background? Who knows if he's from the secular world or the inner martial world?" Yu Manchuan was very dissatisfied with Yu Dongxing's idea and asked, "This method of yours sounds perfect, but there's a fatal flaw. What if that brat refuses to come? Have you prepared any other countermeasure?" "Father, don't worry, he definitely won't. Since he's so obsessed with cultivation, he will definitely thirst for even more power." Yu Dongxing seemed to have already expected this question from his father. He raised his eyebrows proudly and said frankly with assurance, "Since he's already infinitely close to becoming a revered warrior, and now that there's a ready-made opportunity in front of him, if he doesn't go, he'll really be a fool." Clan Master Yu went through the entire plan again and did not find any problems. Finally, he nodded his head in satisfaction. Chapter 1303. Master Yu solemnly said to Yu Dongxing, "All right, Dongxing, I'll leave this matter to you. Remember, you must not let that brat speak carelessly. Wait until we reach the Awakening Heaven Gate, just follow the instructions and don't even think about getting involved blindly. Otherwise, our Yu clan will definitely not let him off easily, and similarly, we will not let the Yu clan of the secular world off." "Yes, Grandpa. I'll definitely do it," Yu Dongxing immediately promised. "Father, I feel that if we do this—" Yu Manchuan still wanted to object, but family head Yu waved his hand, stopping him from saying anything else. He said bluntly, "You don't have to say anything more, I have already decided to let that brat participate in the recruitment. As for the other issues, we will discuss them when he comes back alive." After saying that, Master Yu stood up and announced that the meeting was over. He didn't want to bother with the hesitant Yu Manchuan and left the meeting room. Yu Dongxing was also full of joy. It was rare for his proposal to be approved by his grandpa. He quickly said goodbye to Yu Manchuan and ran out of the door to order his subordinates to do what they needed to do. 3 days later, the people of the major sects and clans gradually gathered in Awakening Heaven Gate. The originally spacious and vast land occupied by the sect also felt crowded because more and more people gathered together. At this time, Xiaoqun had already received the list of people from the 3 clans sent by Elder Sunday. He was looking through the list with Miss Xing in the sect master's room. When Xiaoqun saw the candidates from the Tang clan and the Jia clan, he couldn't help but smile. Although the former didn't send Tang Qianling, but played a little trick and sent Tang Tang, which was a bit of a pity, Jia Muzhen was smart enough to get Jia Tuyao. In fact, Xiaoqun didn't know that Jia Tuyao was sent here by his father, Jia Yuto, which solved the problem of Jia Muzhen having no one to send. But when Xiaoqun's eyes fell on the list of people provided by the Yu clan, he was stunned. The name Yu Xiaoquan was written on the list. Why is Yu Xiaoquan here? Wasn't he free and unfettered in the secular world? Xiaoqun was puzzled for a while before he gradually guessed the Yu clan master's intentions. He couldn't help but click his tongue. He never thought that the Yu clan, one of the 3 great clans, would actually be so cowardly. They had come here in such a roundabout way to send Yu Xiaokun, who was completely unrelated to them. It was obvious that they wanted him to be the cannon fodder in the front. However, after careful consideration, Xiaoqun still chose Yu Xiaochuan. Although he did not know what his current cultivation was, after entering the world of cultivation with his protection, there would basically be no problems. It was rare to have an acquaintance that he had not seen for a long time, so it was good to bring him along. After looking through the list of the 3 great clans, Xishan Jinyunyu and Song Weizong came in at the same time. However, their expressions were not very good. Clearly they had already quarreled outside. The giant ox of the Western Mountain walked rather quickly. It strode to the front of Xiaoqun and handed over the name list of the members of the Ghost Cultivation sect that had gone through layers of screening and assessment. Song Weizong was a step too late. He could only snort lightly and stand at the side with the name list, resentfully waiting. Xiaoqun took the name list from the giant ox of the Western Mountain and glanced through it. His expression was originally very calm, but when he saw the last few names on the list, his expression suddenly became very surprised. You seem to be a little surprised. Oh. Immortal Xiao, is there a problem with the Ghost Cultivation sect's candidate? Seeing that Xiaoqun was staring at a certain place on the name list of the Ghost Cultivation sect and frowning without saying anything, the giant ox of the Western Mountain's expression changed slightly. It tilted its head to take a look, but did not find anything wrong. It could not help but ask in puzzlement. I really have a question to ask you. Xiaoqun pointed to the name at the bottom of the name list and asked in an unfriendly tone, why did you cross out the names of the people at the bottom? Only then did the giant ox of the Western Mountain understand where Xiaoqun's question was. It hurriedly said with a smile, Immortal Xiao, I'm really sorry. Because the selection of the candidates this time was decided after a batch of assessments and competitions. Those who were crossed out below are those who failed to be selected. I came here in a hurry to hand over the materials to you, so I did not have time to write a clean name list. I have made a fool of myself in front of you. Xiaoqun waved his hand impatiently and asked with a sullen face, cut the crap. I just want to ask you, Nie Xiaoyu and the old ghost of the Western Mountain are cultivators. Are they not qualified to go to the world of cultivation? Why did you cross them out? You'd better give me a reasonable explanation. Well, the giant ox of the Western Mountain scratched its head. Although it was a little puzzled why Xiaoqun cared so much about these 2 people, it still explained respectfully, because the strength of some evil cultivators and cultivators is really too low, and there is nothing special about them. Even if they are selected to go to the world of cultivation, they will only cause us trouble and will not help us at all. So I simply disqualified them. Oh, I think these 2 people are quite suitable. Xiaoqun curled his lips and directly picked up the pen to fill in the names of Nie Xiaoyu and the old ghost of the Western Mountain. Then he crossed out the names of the other 2 passers-by. He released a trace of spiritual power to the giant ox of the Western Mountain and said lightly, then let's make a happy decision. Do you have any objections? No, of course, no problem. Everything is decided by Immortal Xiao. The giant ox of the Western Mountain nodded blankly. Soon its whole body trembled. It was a little puzzled by its own actions just now. What was going on? Why did it agree with Xiaoqun's decision for no reason? In fact, the giant ox of the Western Mountain didn't know that its consciousness was controlled by Xiaoqun's spiritual power just now. Although it was only a few seconds, it was enough to affect its brain and make some wrong judgments. Moreover, with the strength of Xiaoqun at the mysterious ascending stage, the giant ox of the Western Mountain would never be able to discover his little tricks. It would only feel that its thoughts were a little strange. Well, then it's okay. I'll look at the candidates on the side of the Immortal Cultivation sect. Xiao Chen put away his spiritual power, stuffed the list of the Ghost Cultivation sect into the hands of the giant ox of the Western Mountain, and turned to take the list from Song Weizong's hand. In Xiao Chen's view, although the strength of Nie Xiaoyu and the old ghost of the Western Mountain was indeed not high, they had helped him a lot, and he owed them a favor. There was a lack of suitable places for them to cultivate in the secular world. The Immortal Cultivation world was probably full of spiritual energy which could be used by them. It was understandable that Xiao Chen planned to take them into the Immortal Cultivation world to improve their cultivation. Holding the altered list of the Ghost Cultivation sect members, the giant ox of the Western Mountain retreated to the side in confusion. It was still thinking in its mind. What happened just now? Why did it agree so easily? Chapter 1304. Looking at the two people who had been crossed off the list, Shishan Giant Ox wanted to cry but had no tears. He didn't dare to talk back to Xiao Chen. It was too late to regret now. Li Xiener? Why is she here too? After looking at the list of the Immortal Cultivation sects, Xiao Chen muttered in confusion. Why does it seem that almost all the people I know have gathered together? Could it be that the Immortal Cultivation world is the base camp of my family? Although he felt strange, Xiao Chen didn't raise any objections. Since she wanted to go, then let her go. In any case, as a member of the Immortal Cultivation sect, Song Weizong and the others would definitely arrange for someone to take care of her. Hearing Xiao Chen's muttering, Song Weizong's heart couldn't help but skip a beat. With the example of Shishan Giant Ox, he certainly didn't dare to be negligent. He approached and asked cautiously, "Little friend Xiao Chen, is there a problem with this Li Xiener? If you think she can't go, then tell me. I can let another disciple replace her." "Oh, it's not a big problem. She happens to be my younger sister's classmate, so when I saw this name I was just a little surprised." Xiao Chen shrugged and explained simply. He had only met Li Xiener a few times, and his impression of her was a little vague. He didn't have a good impression of her, but he didn't have any malicious intentions either. He was just purely curious. So that's how it is. Li Xiener can be the classmate of little friend Xiao Chen's younger sister. It's her good fortune. Song Weizong heaved a sigh of relief and sighed sincerely. After looking at everyone's list, Xiao Chen silently calculated in his heart. He found that apart from the Ghost Cultivation sect and the Immortal Cultivation sect, there were only a total of 6 people from the Awakening sect and the 3 major families. There were still 4 extra places. Xiao Chen pondered for a while and decided to give the 4 spots to the Ghost Cultivation sect and the Immortal Cultivation sect. After all, the 2 sects had contributed to the process of the sacrificial ceremony and the search for the women with spiritual qi, so it was not too much to give them 2 more spots. He inadvertently turned his head to look and found that Shishan Giant Bull was standing at the side gloomily, staring at the name list in his hand with a dejected look. It was obvious that he was depressed for rashly agreeing to Xiao Chen's exchange just now. All right. Who are you trying to show your stinky face to? If I didn't know better, I would have thought that I was bullying you." Xiao Chen scolded angrily. "Isn't it just the 2 of you? I'll add 2 more slots for you. You can add those 2 people in." "Immortal Xiao, I didn't." Shishan Giant Bull was about to explain when it suddenly heard the second half of Xiao Chen's sentence. Its face suddenly lit up and it asked, "Is what you said true? Can I really add these 2 to the team? Do you think I'm joking with you? If you don't want them, I'll take them back." Xiao Chen rolled his eyes and said indifferently, Yes. How could I not want them? Thank you, Immortal Xiao, for being so magnanimous, wise and considerate. Most importantly, you are really good to me." Shishan Giant Bull's face almost turned into a chrysanthemum flower. It couldn't wait to use all the words of praise on Xiao Chen. "So, Xiao Chen, my little friend, look." Song Weizong was dumbfounded. Why did he only give 2 spots to the Ghost Cultivation sect? Didn't he say that it would be evenly distributed? Why was there favoritism? If the Ghost Cultivation sect only had 2 more people in the Immortal Cultivation world, how could the Immortal Cultivation sect survive there? As he was thinking about how to express his dissatisfaction, Xiao Chen waved his hand and said indifferently, "Don't think too much. Of course, I won't only give them 1. Your Immortal Cultivation sect will also have 2 more spots. You can choose the candidates yourself. What do you think? Is that enough?" "Enough. Okay, thank you, my little friend Xiao Chen. You are too polite." Song Weizong was so excited that he couldn't speak coherently. He didn't know what he wanted to express. "Humph, Old ghost song, you have to thank our ghost cultivation sect. If it wasn't for the fact that Immortal Shao gave us 2 places and felt sorry for you, you wouldn't have been able to get these places. The giant ox of the western mountain curled its lips and mocked in a strange tone. Nonsense. I don't want to talk to you. Song Weizong was still immersed in the joy of having 2 more spots. He looked at the list and thought about who to add. He didn't have time to bicker with Shishan Giant Bull. Shishan Giant Bull didn't get a response, so he snorted in boredom. He looked up and saw that the sky outside the window was completely dark. He smiled and suggested to Xiao Qin, "Immortal Shao, it's getting late. I think the preparation for opening the portal is about to be finished. Why don't we go and have a meeting for everyone first? What do you think?" No. Xiao Qin was stunned. He looked out of the window in surprise and asked doubtfully, "I remember that we should be arranged to enter the immortal cultivation world during the day, right? It's so inconvenient to be in the middle of the night." Xiao Qin was a little confused. What were these 2 old guys thinking? Didn't most people sleep at night? Could it be that after entering the immortal cultivation world from the internal martial arts world, they still had to suffer from jet lag? That was too much of a fraud. Shishan Giant Bull explained with a bitter face, Immortal Shao, it's like this. Because our ghost cultivation sect has selected a few cultivators to enter the immortal cultivation world this time, I don't know if you know their attributes. It's not convenient for them to appear during the day, so they can only appear at night. Humph, treacherous villains, a group of guys who can't see the light. Song Weizong snorted coldly. Obviously, he despised the ghost cultivation sect's habit of only appearing at night. His face even showed a look of disgust and disdain. Shishan Giant Bull glared at him and didn't refute. After all, Song Weizong was right. Not only did cultivators dislike daytime, but even the evil cultivators were not willing to act wantonly in broad daylight. The sun shone in all directions and was extremely hot. The sunlight was even more righteous, which had a great impact on the mental cultivation methods of the ghost cultivation sect. Therefore, these cultivators usually did not want to see the light. Otherwise, their combat power would be greatly reduced. Oh, I see. Okay, then let's go now. After listening to the explanation of Shishan Giant Bull, Xiao Qin suddenly realized. He remembered that Nye Xiaoyu and Shishan Old Ghost were really like this. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they basically did not go out during the day and hid in the coolest place. Xiao Qin remembered that Nye Xiaoyu once told him that if the yin qi in his body came into contact with sunlight, it would be easily eroded, and his cultivation would also decline or even be seriously injured. Standing up, Xiao Qin was about to leave the room with Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong when he suddenly remembered something. He turned his head and smiled at Xing Girl next to him. "By the way, you will be the representative of Qi Tian sect in the mobilization meeting later. You will go to the speech part and I will just watch from the side." Chapter 1305. You want me to give a speech? But I don't know how to do that. Hearing Xiao Qin say this, Xing Niu panicked and didn't know what to do. Growing up in Awakening Heaven sect, Xing Niu had always been used to doing things according to orders. In the past, whenever there was a big occasion in Awakening Heaven sect, it was always Sidu Qitian or Elder Son who went on stage to give a speech. She had nothing to do at all. Now that she suddenly had to give a speech in front of so many Awakening Heaven sect disciples, and there were many people from other sects watching, Xing Niu felt her mind go blank and subconsciously wanted to refuse. Why wouldn't I know how to? Can't I just go up and say a few words? Without waiting for Xing Niu to organize a reason to refuse, Xiao Qin said matter-of-factly, "What's more, you're the grand sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect. As the person in charge, I'm just a part-time errand boy. How can I steal your limelight at such a crucial time?" "TSK, you sure make it sound nice." Hearing Xiao Qin say this, Xing Niu pouted and immediately retorted, "Why is it that ever since you came to Awakening Heaven sect, it seems like you're the one in charge of everything? It doesn't have anything to do with me at all. Now you remember me, the sect leader?" Although she said this, Xing Niu also knew that what Xiao Qin said was the truth. As the sect leader of Awakening Heaven sect, if she still let Xiao Qin go on stage in this kind of big occasion, it would seem too lacking in prestige. Not to mention the Awakening Heaven sect disciples, even the spectators would think that she was just a puppet. Although she was still a little unwilling, Xing Niu threw the thought of refusing to the back of her mind. She tried hard to recall what Sidu Qitian and Elder Son had said in the past and frowned as she organized her words. "I just want you to get used to it first." Xiao Qin didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he boasted shamelessly, Since we're already so familiar with each other, what difference does it make? What do you mean by outside inside? Do you think a married couple lives? Nonsense. This Xiaochen was too shameless. The Xishan giant bull and Song Weizong were still outside. They dared to say anything. Don't worry, just boldly go on stage and spout nonsense. Anyway, no matter what you say, no one will dare to raise any objections. Xiaochen waved his hand carelessly and hummed a little tune, "Little sister, walk boldly forward." He pulled Xing Lass's hand and left the room, walking towards the plaza near the main entrance of Qitian Gate. Feeling the warmth from Xiaochen's hand, Miss Xing's heart was filled with happiness that she had never experienced before. However, her mouth refused to admit defeat. She pouted and said, "Since no one dares to object, you might as well go and give a speech. I'm not good at this." Cough, cough, cough. Oh. My throat suddenly feels uncomfortable. I can't speak. Xiaochen suddenly violently coughed a few times and pretended to be in pain. With one hand he grabbed Xing Lass and refused to let go. With the other hand he made yes sounds in sign language. Little Miss Xing was already speechless at Xiaochen's feigning ignorance. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Looking at his comical feigning ignorance, she found it both funny and infuriating. She couldn't be bothered to expose him anymore. Besides, Xiaochen was usually weird. After interacting with him for a long time, little Chick Xing became familiar with his unconventional way of doing things. She was influenced by him and smiled a lot more than before. After this period of close contact, Xing Lass's impression of Xiaochen had gradually changed. She could also feel his care and concern for her. The favorable impression between the two had greatly increased. Although the paper window between them had not been pierced, it was already so thin that it was almost invisible. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that although the two had not reached the stage of marriage, they had already accepted each other in their hearts. After calling out to the group of girls next door, Xiaochen brought the female army to the plaza near the open heaven gate. Looking at the dense crowd of cultivators in the plaza, all of them had looks of admiration on their faces. Their eyes were shining as they watched him and the others walk over in a line. Then he turned back to look at Qing Minjing and the other girls behind him. Xiaochen couldn't help but feel very emotional. When he had first entered the inner martial world, and even when he had just entered the venerable realm, he was just an insignificant cultivator among the many cultivators. Now he had become the manipulator behind the scenes of the open heaven gate, the three great clans, and even the immortal cultivation sect and the ghost cultivation sect. Xiaochen suddenly felt that all the mountains were small. However, Xiaochen did not become arrogant because of this. He was very clear about the following situation. As long as he entered the immortal cultivation world, the days of having clouds and rain turned over with one turn of the hand would be gone forever. He would have to start from zero again. After all, the immortal cultivation world was full of cultivators. As a fellow cultivator, he had personally experienced the strength of cultivators. Moreover, the omnipotent elder heaven ancestor had fallen from there. Therefore, Xiaochen firmly remembered that after entering the immortal cultivation world, he absolutely could not be careless. Otherwise, it was very likely that a single mistake would lead to the destruction of the entire team. Although it was called a mobilization meeting, there was actually nothing to mobilize. Everyone had already received the news. Right now they were just going through the motions. At the beginning, Xishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong announced the list of people who were qualified to enter the immortal cultivation world. After all the cultivators had been announced, the rest of the cultivators were naturally taken away by the disciples of Awakening Heaven sect. They returned to their sect residences to rest and waited for the next day to pack their luggage and return home. The candidates of the immortal cultivation sect were Hong Zhu, Li Xiener and her master, the head of the Hong family Hong Dingwei, the head of the Song family Song Weizong, Song Qingshu, third young master Hong, and a few unknown disciples. Originally, Hong Dingwei had asked Hong Yan if she would like to experience the immortal cultivation world with Hong Zhu. Unfortunately, Hong Yan hesitated for a long time and finally chose to refuse. After all, when the time came, Xiaochen would also enter. The relationship between the two had not broken the ice yet. If he entered the immortal cultivation world, it would definitely be affected. Hong Yan did not want to cause trouble for others because of her, so she simply did not enter. On the other side, the people of the ghost cultivation sect were Xishan Giant Ox, Elder Xishan Mad Devil, Nie Xiaoyu and Old Demon of Xishan, who were personally selected by Xiaochen. As for the rest of the strange-looking guys, Xiaochen did not know them. As for the people of Awakening Heaven sect, in addition to Xiaochen, Qing Minjing and Tang Tang, the The rest were Gong Sun Yin, Yu Xiaochuan, and Jia Tuyao. There were 6 of them in total. Together with the 24 people from the other 2 sects, they just reached the upper limit of the number of people to enter the immortal cultivation world. Chapter 1306. When there were only those who wanted to enter the immortal cultivation world left on the square, Shishan Giant Cow and Song Weizong stood in front of the stage respectively and said some encouraging words to the disciples of their respective sections. They were rather restrained and only set their goals on their own cultivation and breakthrough. They did not directly go against the other sections. Otherwise, it was very likely that the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect would have already fought each other before entering the Immortal Cultivation world. When Shishan Giant Cow and Song Weizong had finished speaking, Miss Xing turned around and looked at Xiaochen for guidance. Xiaochen nodded at her and smiled encouragingly. Little Chick Xing took a deep breath, turned around and walked up to the stage. She also gave an impassioned and generous speech. She looked pretty decent. Although the atmosphere was stirred up by Miss Xing, her motivational speech was actually nothing special. It was nothing more than a reminder to everyone that after entering the immortal cultivation world, everything had to be based on Xiaochen as the leader. They had to be cautious and not mess around, lest they offend some forces that they could not afford to offend. The simple mobilization meeting came to an end, and the people below the stage gradually dispersed. Xiaochen thought for a while, and it seemed like he didn't have anywhere else to go, so he stayed behind with Miss Xing, planning to supervise the construction of the altar's formation. This altar's array was what the group of spiritual Qi female priests would be using when the time came. Xiaochen thought that he could take the opportunity to learn more about it. After all, he did not fully understand the domain of spiritual Qi female priests. Brother Xiao. Brother Xiao. Just as Xiaochen turned around and prepared to walk towards the altar's array, a neutral voice suddenly rang out. Then he saw a pink-purple figure split the crowd and rush towards him impatiently. Hearing this familiar name, Xiaochen did not need to turn around to know who it was. Brother Xiao, why are you at Qitianmen? This is simply unbelievable. That figure rushed to Xiaochen's back and pouted coquettishly. Xiaochen laughed helplessly and turned around to greet, "Young Master Kun, long time no see. How have you been recently? Your Yu clan should have a lot of influence in Songning City now, right?" The person who came was Yu Xiaochuan, who had not been seen for a long time. He was wearing a pink and purple sportswear, and his elegant long hair was permed into big waves. He looked very feminine. Seeing Xiaochen, whom he had been thinking about day and night, appear before him, Yu Xiaochuan was extremely excited. He grabbed Xiaochen's hand and said, "Oh, Brother Xiao, where have you been recently? I miss you so much." "Ugh, I've been." Hearing Yu Xiaochuan's self-title, Xiaochen couldn't help but shiver. He was about to answer his question when he was suddenly interrupted by Yu Xiaochuan. "By the way, what nonsense were you talking about?" Yu Xiaochuan suddenly blushed and stamped his feet. He pouted and said, "Since the decline of the Qing family, the most powerful family in Songning City is your Xiao family. Our Yu clan is just a helper for the Xiao family, just like how we've been helping you." Looking at Yu Xiaochuan's beautiful outfit, coupled with his blushing and coquettish manner, Xiaochen only felt his hair stand on end. He really couldn't accept it. Just as he was thinking about how to answer this topic, Qing Minjing, who was behind him, became unhappy. "Yu Xiaochuan, you really can't say anything decent. What nonsense are you saying in front of me?" Qing Minjing stood out from behind Xiaochen. She put her hands on her hips and scolded with her eyes wide open. "Although our Qing family suffered a little setback a while ago, we've overcome it now. We're still developing vigorously in Songning City. How could we decline? Don't talk nonsense over there." "That's right. If you ask Beibei, the Xiao family, the Qing family, and the Jin family are the top 3 families in Songning City. What the hell is the Yu clan? What's so great about it?" Jin Beibei also came close at this moment, not convinced at all. "You're right. The Yu clan is only a small fry at best. They're nothing in front of me." Qing Minjing nodded in high spirits. For the first time, she felt that Jin Beibei's words were quite pleasing to her ears. Jin Beibei walked around Yu Xiaochuan and observed him for a while. Suddenly, she asked Xiaochen in confusion, "Cousin-in-law, is this person a man or a woman? Why does he look like a transvestite?" In fact, Jin Beibei knew Yu Xiaochuan. However, he looked completely different from the one Jin Beibei had seen at that time. It was normal for Jin Beibei to be a little puzzled. "Well, actually he's fine." Xiaochen was slightly stunned. He also glanced at Yu Xiaochuan and didn't know what to say when he saw Yu Xiaochuan's feminine look. Looking at Yu Xiaochuan's current look, Xiaochun really couldn't figure out what was going on with him. In his impression, Xiaochun only knew that this guy had become a bit androgynous after practicing the Chrysanthemum treasure book. However, it didn't seem to be as exaggerated as it was now. Although Xiaochun couldn't get used to Yu Xiaochuan's change, Yu Xiaochuan was really good to him. Previously he risked his life to block the attack for Xiaochun and took care of Tang Tang for a while. By the way, Yu Xiaochuan hadn't seen Tang Tang yet. Tang Tang. Come here and see who's here. Xiaochun hurriedly turned his head and shouted at Tang Tang, who was farther away. Hearing Xiaochun's shout, Tang Tang walked over from a distance. Seeing that it was Yu Xiaochuan, she was a little surprised. However, when she saw Qing Minjing's angry face and Jin Beibei's cunning eyes, she could roughly guess what had happened. Yu Xiaochuan, long time no see. Why are you arguing with Miss Qing as soon as you come? Tang Tang walked forward and greeted Yu Xiaochuan. Then she turned around and said to Qing Minjing and Jin Beibei, please don't mind him. This guy is a bit weird and he doesn't mince his words. Please don't take it to heart. Although she was not very friendly to Yu Xiaochuan, Tang Tang's main purpose was to help him out of trouble. After all, this guy was her sister. She knew exactly why he became like this. Qing Minjing was not an unreasonable person in the first place. Hearing what Tang Tang said, her face was much more relaxed. She sniffed and said, since you are defending him, I'll let it go this time. Remember, the Qing family will never decline. Jin Beibei echoed, cousin, you're right. Yu Xiaochuan, not that I want to criticize you, but you really live up to the saying long hair but short eyes. Miss Qing, Jin Beibei, sister Tang Tang. Seeing that Qing Minjing and the other women were also present, Yu Xiaochuan did not feel angry because of their sarcasm. Instead, he was happy as if he had seen his family. He was excited and his eyes sparkled. He asked very enthusiastically, why are you guys here? What a coincidence. We are so fated. Chapter 1307. It's a long story. Miss and the others. Xiaochun was also helpless towards Yu Xiaochuan. Seeing that the other women had no intention of answering him, he had to briefly describe his and Qing Minjing's experiences. He also deliberately concealed some of the more legendary content, so as not to arouse Yu Xiaochuan's curiosity and incessant questions. Although Xiaochun was still not used to Yu Xiaochuan's situation, Yu Xiaochuan was still a person who saved his life. In the future, everyone would be wandering in the cultivation world. He couldn't ignore him. There were still some situations that he had to let Yu Xiaochuan know in advance. Wow. Brother Xiao, I didn't expect you and Miss Cheng's experience to be so rough. You guys are really lucky. Yu Xiaochuan cupped his hands in his chest and said with a tearful look, I feel terrible just by listening to it. I didn't expect you to have such courage to face it. I admire you so much. Actually, it's not that bad. Xiaochun trembled unconsciously and replied with difficulty. Yu Xiaochuan's face became serious. He suddenly turned to blame, Brother Xiao, I'm not trying to criticize you. Since you were in trouble in Songning City, why didn't you call me? Did you think that I couldn't beat that centipede? In fact, Yu Xiaochuan felt a little jealous after listening to the experience of Xiaochen and Qing Minjing. If the person who went through the difficulties with Xiaochen was him, he would definitely not let him suffer so much. Ugh. Xiaochen was really speechless this time. The sweat on his head was almost coming down. He had never thought of asking Yu Xiaochuan to help him before. After all, this was a matter between him and Qing Minjing. In the situation at that time, there was no need to involve Yu Xiaochuan. Besides, Qing Minjing and I are engaged. It's natural for us to overcome difficulties together. Although Yu Xiaochuan has a good relationship with me, it's not that good. Why should I think of you? However, these words could not be said directly to Yu Xiaochuan. Otherwise, with Yu Xiaochuan's temper, it was possible that he would cry. Xiaochen was at a loss of what to do and did not know how to deal with it. Suddenly, whispers came from not far away. Hey, do you think that androgynous transvestite is having an affair with the gigolo on the stage? Tsk, there must be a problem. I heard that the pretty boy is called Xiaochen, and he is also the leader of this trip to the cultivation world. No way, what was Junyo thinking? To actually let this Lord Longyang lead the team, wouldn't they be done for? It looks like we're in grave danger this time. Holy shit. Can you guys keep your voices down? Although that person has a penchant for men, it is said that he is an extremely powerful expert. Be careful not to let him hear it. So what if he hears it? Anyway, when we enter the cultivation world, we will all go our separate ways. I don't want to be commanded by this kind of monster. Not far away, a group of evil cultivators from the ghost cultivation sect gathered together and whispered to each other. Some of them even pointed at Xiaoqin and Yu Xiaochuan and laughed wretchedly from time to time. Although the evil cultivators' voices were very low, they were still heard by Xiaoqin, who had a sensitive divine sense. However, he did not care too much. With his current cultivation, it was easy for him to kill those evil cultivators. He just felt that there was no need to make a big deal out of it. After all, with Xiaoqin's current cultivation, there was already a world of difference between him and these evil cultivators who were hiding in the dark. If he really fought with them, it would be degrading his own status. You bastards, what are you hiding there and talking about? Xiaoqin did not plan to make a move, but Yu Xiaochuan did not want to pretend that he did not hear it. He immediately turned around and stared at the evil cultivators and said sinisterly, Mother****, so what if I am talking about you? The evil cultivators were not afraid of trouble. They looked at each other and one of them, who was burly, stood out first. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and stared at Yu Xiaochuan with a sullen face. Yu Xiaochuan was not frightened by the evil cultivator's imposing manner. Instead, he stared at the evil cultivator and said coldly, It's fine if you are talking about me, but why do you have to drag Brother Xiao into this? He is so handsome from head to toe. How does he look like a monster? Hurry up and come over here and apologize to our brother Xiao. Apologize? The burly evil cultivator did not take Yu Xiaochuan's threat seriously at all. Instead, he spat and said sarcastically, Looking at your clothes, I can tell that you are not a good person. Moreover, you are flirting with that toy boy. I guess you must have had a lot of fun in the room last night, right? Ah. The other evil cultivators seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. They immediately convulsed with laughter and could not close their mouths. In their opinion, Yu Xiaochuan was just a wax spear with a silver appearance. He was not a threat at all. You are courting death. The corner of Yu Xiaochuan's mouth curled up into a cold smile. He moved slightly a few steps and then he did not move again. Suddenly, a cold wind blew around them. Yu Xiaochuan stood there, staring coldly at the leading evil cultivator. His eyes were emotionless, as if he was looking at a dead man. Xiaoqin, who was standing behind him, suddenly raised his eyebrows, and his expression changed when he looked at Yu Xiaochuan. In the eyes of others, Yu Xiaochuan was confronting the evil cultivator, but Xiaoqin was very clear that the evil cultivator was already dead. This was also something that secretly surprised Xiaoqin. When did Yu Xiaochuan become so powerful? Was it because of the chrysanthemum treasure book? The evil cultivators behind the burly evil cultivator waited for a long time. Seeing that Yu Xiaochuan just moved a few steps and did not move again, they could not help but sneer, Hey, what a useless thing. Apart from speaking tough, you don't dare to... Before they could finish their words, they saw the strong evil cultivator in front of them leaning forward at a very slow speed, as if he could not stand steadily. The evil cultivators were still confused. They didn't know what was going on until they saw the burly evil cultivator tilt to a certain angle. Then, his head suddenly fell to the ground with a thump. Then, the head rolled in a circle and happened to face the group of dumbfounded evil cultivators. Then he looked at the burly evil cultivator again. Half an hour ago he was still waiting for Yu Xiaochuan to attack. When he was a little impatient, he vaguely felt a cold wind blowing, and then suddenly felt that the scene in front of him was distorted. Then he felt dizzy as if he had fallen down, and then he could no longer control his body. Chapter 1308. The burly evil practitioner also heard the muffled sound, but he didn't know where it came from. The last thing he saw was the horrified expression on his companion's face, and the scene of an ant slowly crawling in front of him. What followed was darkness. His last thought before he died was, I was facing Yu Xiaochuan, why did I see the face of my companion behind me? Silence reigned. No one spoke in the spacious square for a while. The shocked expressions on the evil practitioners' faces lingered for a long time. They didn't understand what had happened just now. They watched helplessly as the burly evil cultivator's head was suddenly separated from his body. The wound on his neck looked like it had been scratched by the claws of a ferocious beast. Although the wound was not very neat, it was direct and effective. It was a fatal blow. Yu Xiaochuan, aren't you a bit too cruel? You just need to teach that kind of fool a lesson. You don't have to kill him, do you? Xiao Chen's helpless voice broke the strange silence. In fact, Xiao Chen didn't pay much attention just now, so he didn't see Yu Xiaochuan's movements clearly. He only saw a figure suddenly flash, and then there seemed to be 5 thin lines scratching the evil practitioner's neck. Then Yu Xiaochuan returned to his original position. Although Yu Xiaochuan's movements were smooth, his speed was too fast. Except for Xiao Chen, the others only saw Yu Xiaochuan move a few steps. They didn't even see how he moved, let alone what weapon he used. In addition to vaguely seeing Yu Xiaochuan's movements, Xiao Chen also felt a familiar aura from this guy. When Yu Xiaochuan fought with Elder Tsong in the Xiao family, he seemed to have shown this aura. At that time, Xiao Chen didn't quite understand it, but now he knew that it was the aura of a standard cultivator. Yu Xiaochuan was a cultivator like Cheng Menjing or even himself. Brother Xiao, I'm sorry. They said bad things about you and I couldn't control myself, so I killed that brat. Yu Xiaochuan's originally cold expression suddenly disappeared. He turned around and lowered his head as he muttered, I won't blame you if you're just killing someone who deserves to be killed. However, they're all from the ghost cultivation sect. It'll be troublesome to explain. Xiao Chen glanced at the panicking evil cultivator and felt a headache coming on. Yu Xiaochuan's body trembled slightly, but it was not because he was nervous about killing someone, but because he was afraid that Xiao Chen would really be angry. When he heard what Yu Xiaochuan said, he carefully apologized. Brother Xiao, can you forgive me this once? I promise. I won't be so rash next time. Forget it. Anyway, it's just a dead evil cultivator. It's not a big deal. You just need to be more careful in the future. Don't be so rash. Xiao Chen sighed and waved his hand. Yu Xiaochuan's pitiful look made Xiao Chen unable to stand it anymore. Besides, he only made a move because those people were insulting him, so there was no need to argue with him anymore. Okay. Brother Xiao, I will listen to you in the future. I will kill whoever you want me to kill, otherwise I won't do it easily. Yu Xiaochuan finally breathed a sigh of relief. A flower-like smile bloomed on his face as he nodded repeatedly in agreement. Yu Xiaochuan thought to himself, Brother Xiao is really good to me. He can't bear to scold me more, but how did he know that I killed that evil cultivator? When I was in the secular world, I often did this and no one could see through it. That's right. Brother Xiao must be more powerful than before. When he pretended to be the White Fox hero, didn't he easily cause headaches for the big families in Songning City? How can my insignificant cultivation be mentioned in the same breath as him? However, it was one thing for Xiao Chen not to care, but those evil cultivators would not let it go. After cleaning up the body of the burly evil cultivator, they immediately ran to Shishan Giant Bull. First, they shirked their responsibility, then they added oil and vinegar to accuse Xiao Chen. Although these evil cultivators did not see who did it, they unanimously believed that Yu Xiaochuan, the transvestite, was the culprit. After all, among all the people present, he was the most suspicious. Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong were supervising the construction of the altar and the magic circle at this time. After hearing the bad news, they suddenly became furious. They immediately put down the work in their hands and rushed in the direction pointed by those evil cultivators, ready to kill Yu Xiaochuan on the spot. After running a few steps, Shishan Giant Bull saw the back of Yu Xiaochuan, who was neither a man nor a woman. He was chatting with Xiao Chen at this time and did not notice the movement here at all. When the Shishan Giant Bull saw this scene, it slowed down its pace and its mind started working quickly. In his opinion, since Yu Xiaochuan and Xiao Chen could talk so happily, their relationship was obviously not ordinary. Shishan Giant Bull did not think wrongly. He only thought that these two people were very likely to be friends for many years. If he killed Yu Xiaochuan, wouldn't it be a slap in the face to Xiao Chen? However, Shishan Giant Bull thought about it again. Now that his subordinate was killed so inexplicably, he could not just sit back and do nothing. Otherwise, how could he convince the public in the future? Shishan Giant Bull thought about it and hesitated for a while. He felt that he still had to go up and ask. At least he had to show his attitude first. After taking a few steps forward, Shishan Giant Bull looked at the corpse on the ground and then looked at Yu Xiaochuan's strange clothes. He hesitated for a moment and said, Xiao? Immortal Xiao, hello. Sorry to disturb you. I have something to ask. Before Shishan Giant Bull finished speaking, he was interrupted by Xiao Chen with a wave of his hand. He naturally understood the reason for Shishan Giant Bull's visit. He said lightly, You want to ask about that evil cultivator, right? Yes, I want to know what the situation is. Shishan Giant Bull nodded repeatedly and looked at Xiao Chen eagerly. Oh, I don't like that evil cultivator and he said bad things about my friend so I killed him. Xiao Chen's tone seemed to be saying that today's weather was good. He turned to look at Shishan Giant Bull with a smile and said, "Do you have any other questions?" "No. It's okay." Shishan Jinyunyu shook his head sullenly. After thinking for a while, he added with a bitter face, "But Immortal Xiao, if you want to teach the disciples of our ghost cultivation sect a lesson in the future, can you inform me first? This way I can also understand what mistakes he has made and I can answer to the other disciples, right?" Chapter 1309. In fact, Shishan Giant Ox also knew the character of those disciples. When they described what happened, they would shirk responsibility and fabricate facts. However, as a mighty immortal, Xiao Chen would definitely not lie to him. Therefore what he said should be the real thing at that time. Since his subordinate was the one who made the mistake first and offended Xiao Chen's friend, then he deserved to die. He could not argue any further. At most, when he went back, he would teach everyone a lesson with Xiao Chen's portrait. He would let those arrogant disciples know that no matter who they offended, they should not offend this guy. And the people around this guy. Oh, I see. Xiao Chen nodded indifferently, but in his heart he thought, "Do I need to inform you that I killed an evil cultivator? If it weren't for the fact that you still have some value, just the crime of kidnapping Lu Shuangshuang, Yi Xiaoye and Lan Xinxin would be enough to exterminate the entire ghost cultivation sect." Shishan Giant Ox naturally did not know the inner thoughts of Xiao Chen. Instead he nodded gratefully and said, "Thank you, mighty immortal Xiao. You are really magnanimous. I apologize to your friend on behalf of that blind disciple. I will go back to supervise the work first." "Wait." Xiao Chen waved his hand and stopped Shishan Giant Ox, who was about to leave. He pointed calmly at the altar in the distance and asked, "How is it going over there? How long will it take to finish? Give me a time. I have other things to arrange here." "Soon it will be done in about 30 minutes. If Exalted Immortal Xiao has any instructions, please let me know. I will immediately ask Old Ghost Song to do it." Shishan Giant Bull was stunned for a moment and replied honestly. He was a little puzzled. It was almost done. What else could Xiao Chen arrange? Did he need other things to carry out the sacrifice besides the altar and the array? It didn't seem to be mentioned in the ancient books. Xiao Chen estimated the time in his heart and ordered, "Since it's almost done, you can start clearing the area now. Ask all the unrelated people to retreat and find a safe place to wait for orders. After the ritual is completed and the portal is opened, then let the people who are preparing to enter the world of immortal cultivation come over, lest they are innocently affected by the heavenly tribulation during the ritual and accidentally die." "Okay. I'll inform them right away." Shishan Giant Ox was suddenly enlightened and hurriedly nodded in agreement. After all, it was the first time for the immortal cultivation sects and the ghost cultivation sects to witness such a large-scale sacrificial ceremony, so they didn't know how powerful the heavenly tribulation was. Fortunately, Xiao Chen was more thoughtful. Otherwise, if those people who wanted to go in were standing at the side of the altar, waiting for the teleportation circle to open, and ended up being killed by the heavenly tribulation for no reason, it would not be worth it. Looking at the back of Shishan Giant Ox leaving quickly, Yu Xiaochuan admired Xiao Chen even more. He said shyly and admiringly with a red face, "Brother Xiao, I didn't expect you to be so awesome now. You're just like the domineering CEO in the online novels. I really didn't choose the wrong person. Staying by your side, I feel so safe." "It's nothing. Just don't make trouble for me in the future." Xiao Chen felt goosebumps all over his body. He quietly stood a little further away from Yu Xiaochuan, then waved his hand and said, "Now hurry up and find a safe place to hide with Bebe and the others. We'll talk about other things after we enter the world of cultivators." Although Xiao Chen was quite helpless about Yu Xiaochuan's eccentric character, there was nothing he could do about him. Therefore he could only send him away as soon as possible, in case he would say something disgusting and attract countless surprised eyes. Frowning, Cheng Menjing reminded him worriedly, "Xiao Chen, you and Jingxian must pay attention to your safety. Be careful. Remember, we are all waiting for the news of your success." Jean Bebe waved her little fist and cheered for Xiao Chen. "Right, cousin-in-law? Bebe will be watching you with her telepathic thoughts in the distance. You and the other sisters must do your best." Jean Bebe waved her little fist and cheered for Xiao Chen. The other girls who did not participate in the ritual looked worried too. Although they all wanted to help Xiao Chen, their bodies did not meet the requirements. Therefore they could only remind Xiao Chen briefly before they left with Yu Xiaochuan. Xiao Qin stared at their departing silhouettes. Suddenly, a thought popped up in his mind. To be honest, when you Xiaochuan blended into that group of girls, I really couldn't tell that he was a guy for a moment. Putting his thoughts aside, Xiaochen went to visit Nie Xiaoyu and Li Xiener first. He greeted them and briefly introduced the ins and outs of the whole thing, as well as the matters related to entering the world of cultivators, so that they would know what was going on. As Xiaochen was not too familiar with these two girls, he did not chat much. He only told Li Xiener that his younger sister, Xiao Xiao, was also here. Since the two of them were old classmates, they could catch up when the teleportation portal was activated in a safe place. Li Xiener was very happy to hear that. Fluttering her long sleeves, she hurried to the place where Xiao Xiao and the other girls were waiting. Nie Xiaoyu was a little shy. She only nodded at Xiao Chen and left. Nobody knew where she was hiding. Seeing that everything outside had been arranged, Xiao Chen led Xin Jingxian and the other girls to the altar's matrix slowly. Since this altar's matrix was temporarily built, it was completely incomparable to the matrix Xiao Chen saw in the west of the Venerable's mysterious land last time. After all, that was a matrix left from the ancient times. It was much more delicate. The more delicate and complicated the matrix was, the less spiritual qi would be absorbed and consumed, and it would be easier to use. However, time waited for no one. Although the matrix was rough, it could only be used. After all, if he wanted to carve it again, he would need to spend more energy, let alone find a ready-made one. The difficulty was no less than that of Yu Shaochuan. The Ghost Cultivation sect and the Immortal Cultivation sect shook hands and made peace. Coming to the altar's matrix, Song Weizong and Shishan Giant Cow nodded at Xiao Chen. Both of them had different expressions. Song Weizong's expression was more solemn. Obviously, he was worried about the next sacrificial ceremony. On the other hand, Shishan Giant Cow's eyes contained a hint of joy. He originally thought that when Xiao Chen said he would bring women with him, he counted Lu Shuangshuang and the others from the Ghost Cultivation sect as Xiao Chen. He did not expect that this guy would really bring 3 strange girls. Now, the probability of the sacrificial ceremony being successful was even higher. Song Weizong and Shishan Giant Cow had their own thoughts. After briefly introducing the method of using the altar's matrix to Xiao Chen, they retreated to a safe distance. They also handed the ancient books of their respective sects to Xiao Chen so that he could familiarize himself with the sacrificial ceremony. Chapter 13:10. After carefully reading the sacrificial method in the ancient book, Xiao Chen followed its instructions and had the spiritual energy women stand at several key positions in the formation, which were also the eye of the formation. After everyone was in position, Xiao Chen turned his head around to take a look. After confirming that the surroundings had been cleared and there were no longer any disturbances, he cast a camouflage spell. Then he set up a few barriers in the surroundings and walked towards the spot he had left behind. As it was still unknown how powerful the heavenly tribulation was, Xiao Chen planned to use the old dual cultivation method to help the women resist the heavenly tribulation together. Just like how he had resisted the pressure in the venerable realm, it would certainly reduce a lot of the pressure on the women. After sitting down, Xiao Chen gestured for the women to take off their clothes. At first, Lan Xinxin, Yi Xiaoye and Lu Shuangshuang were a little uncomfortable. After all, they were not familiar with the other women and had never taken off their clothes in front of so many people. Yi Xiaoye and Lu Shuangshuang understood Xiao Chen and knew that he would not have any evil thoughts at this time, so they just felt a little embarrassed. Lan Xinxin, on the other hand, was a very careless person and did not expect that taking off her clothes would affect Xiao Chen in any way. She was just a little bashful and felt a little strange. However, while they were hesitating, they saw that Hong Zhu and the other women had calm expressions on their faces and had begun to undress in a very natural manner. Xiao Chen also quickly took off his clothes. They did not want to keep everyone waiting, so they could only blush and slowly unbutton their clothes. Although Hong Yan was also a little bashful, she had already experienced this once in the venerable realm, so she mentally prepared herself and mustered up the courage to also take off her clothes. The slowest one was Lin. Although she had already known that they would need to take off their clothes during the dual cultivation, she had thought that they would at least leave their undergarments on. She did not expect that everyone would actually take off all their clothes in such a short time. Lin, who was already very nervous to begin with, became even more frightened at this moment. Her hands tightly gripped her clothes as she looked at the others in panic. Xiao Chen noticed her strange behavior, but it was not convenient for him to step forward and mediate, so he could only shoot Hong Zhu a meaningful look. Hong Zhu happened to be sitting next to Lin. After receiving Xiao Chen's signal, He turned his head and whispered to Kurlin, What's wrong? Why aren't you taking off your clothes? Everyone is waiting for you." Kurlin was about to cry. She shook her head desperately and said, "No, I don't want to. I'm scared. Can I not take off my clothes?" Hongzhu sighed helplessly. "If you don't take off your clothes will be damaged later. If you don't want to walk out naked in front of everyone, I advise you to take off your clothes now." All right." Kurlin thought about the scene of everyone watching from outside the array and immediately shuddered. She finally began to unbutton her clothes with great difficulty. "That's right. Think about the reason you came here this time. Think about your parents. You wouldn't want everyone to fail in the end because of you, right? You wouldn't want everyone to be unable to go back and visit their loved ones, right?" Hongzhu said in a gentle voice. Thinking about her parents who were anxiously waiting for her at home, Kurlin's heart trembled. She silently nodded her head and began to take off her clothes even faster. Hongzhu returned to his seat and winked at Xiaoqin. Xiaoqin smiled faintly and secretly gave her a thumbs up. Soon everyone was ready. Lu Shuangshuang and the other two girls stole glances at the others and discovered that everyone's eyes were very clear, without any evil thoughts. Instead, they were ready to start cultivating at any time. Their emotions gradually stabilized and they no longer let their imaginations run wild. Kurlin lowered her head, her face as red as a large piece of red cloth. She didn't dare to look at anyone and only wanted to complete the task as quickly as possible so that everything could come to an end. Xiaoqin and the girls sat in a circle. Seeing that everyone was ready, they began to circulate their mental cultivation method and silently recite the incantation to activate the altar's array from the ancient book. After reciting the incantation, the altar's array immediately glowed with a faint white light. Seeing this, the girls didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly closed their eyes and circulated their mental cultivation method. One by one they placed their hands against each other and began to dual cultivate with Xiaoqian. As more and more people joined in, the originally slightly dim white light of the array gradually grew brighter. When the white light of the array reached its peak, a gale suddenly rose around the altar's array. Even the trees in the distance rustled as a thick layer of dark clouds gathered above the array. Occasionally, a few bolts of bluish-purple lightning would shuttle back and forth in the clouds. It was an extremely terrifying sight, as if something was brewing. "It's here." Sensing the abnormality in the array's surroundings, Xiaoqian's heart stirred. He swept his divine sense around and keenly sensed that the air within the altar's array was gradually becoming thinner. In fact, it was even giving off a strong feeling of suffocation. This kind of pressure was much stronger than the pressure in the Venerable Realm's secluded cultivation area. Even Xiaoqian was feeling a little suffocated from the pressure. The expressions of Hongzhu and the other girls also changed slightly. Although everyone was currently sharing the pressure that was distributed to each of them was constantly increasing. If it weren't for Xiaoqian sharing the majority of the pressure, they would have already been crushed into meat patties. As time passed, the white light of the altar's array did not weaken at all. Instead, the thunderclouds above the array grew thicker and thicker. The bluish-purple lightning flowing within the clouds also grew thicker and thicker. The Western Mountain Giant Ox and Song Weizong were the two closest to the altar's array. Although they were still quite a distance away, they could clearly see the surroundings of the array. The two of them had been relying on their superior strength and didn't care too much about the heavenly tribulation. They even wanted to use this opportunity to witness how miracles could happen. However, when they saw the thick thunderclouds that they had never seen before, the two of them felt a little weak. After exchanging a glance, they simultaneously took a few steps back. They didn't want to be implicated and die just because they were standing on the edge of the array. Although they were all outstanding cultivators, they didn't have the confidence that they would be able to escape unscathed under such circumstances. Just when the Western Mountain Giant Ox and Song Weizong thought that they were safe, something unexpected suddenly happened. Boom! The thick thundercloud suddenly let out a deafening boom. An incredibly thick pillar of lightning that could be seen with the naked eye suddenly fell down. Subsequently, a shockwave spread out with the teleportation formation as the center, bringing with it a majestic pressure. Even the nearby trees were swept into it. Chapter 13:11. Not long after, those trees were uprooted and instantly torn to shreds. However, they still could not stop the advance of this powerful qi. The shockwave quickly spread outwards and rushed toward Shishan Giant Bull and Song Weizong with visible ripples. The two of them were scared out of their wits. They immediately flew up and used all the cultivation they had in their lives to shoot backwards at the fastest speed they could reach. Fortunately, the powerful chi gradually weakened after being obstructed by the trees. Only after the two sect masters had retreated several tens of feet did it lose its effectiveness, turning into a gale that ordinary people could withstand. With a whooshing sound, it blew past them and disappeared without a trace. Only then did Song Weizong and the Western Mountain Giant Ox stop in their tracks. Their faces were pale and their lips were blue. They still felt a lingering fear. Both of them could be considered as top-notch experts of the internal martial world, but when they saw such a ferocious and terrifying heavenly tribulation, they were truly shocked. Even though they had managed to avoid it, they still felt a chill run down their backs and cold sweat poured down their backs. At this moment, both Song Weizong and the Western Mountain Giant Ox were thinking of the same thing. If such a thick pillar of lightning struck their bodies, even if they didn't die, they would most likely be crippled even if they were saved. As for that shockwave, if they were to collide head-on with it, they would at least be severely injured. The other onlookers who were standing even further away had looks of terror on their faces. When had they ever seen such a scene before? Some of the evil cultivators who had come to watch the show were so frightened that they took a few steps back. Some of them even thought that it was the end of the world. They used all their strength to turn around and run, fearing that they would be struck by the pillar of lightning if they were not careful. If that happened, they would be turned into charcoal in a matter of minutes. At this moment, in the center of the altar's formation, the people involved, Xiao Qin, Hongzhu and the other women were also shocked. After all, this lightning tribulation had come too suddenly. Other than Xiao Qin, who knew how to resist it with all her might, the other women were caught off guard by the lightning tribulation. Kerlin was so scared that she even forgot to circulate her mental cultivation method. She just sat there in a daze, looking as if she had lost her soul. She didn't know what to do. Strictly speaking, Lin Ke and Lu Shuangshuang could not be considered as official cultivators. The mental cultivation method they were using was only for the sake of participating in the sacrificial ceremony. After working day and night for the past few days, they had barely managed to learn it after much difficulty. It was already very difficult for them to keep up with the pace of the female cultivators, not to mention the sudden appearance of a lightning tribulation. However, compared to the flustered Kerlin, Lu Shuangshuang was much calmer. Although she felt as if her entire body had been struck by lightning and was in extreme pain, she still clenched her teeth and persevered. Due to Kerlin's sudden departure, Xiao Qin suddenly felt that the pressure on the other women had increased. Even he could not withstand the intense pressure. In a moment of desperation, Xiao Qin's face couldn't help but darken as he berated, Don't just sit there in a daze. Why don't you hurry up and circulate your mental cultivation method to receive it? Do you want to kill the others? I'm scared, sob. Kerlin was already very nervous. After being shouted at by Xiao Qin, her fragile heart directly collapsed. She sat on the ground helplessly, crying non-stop. She couldn't even speak clearly. Xiao Qin's heart sank. He also knew that his attitude just now was too harsh. However, the situation was critical and there was no room for hesitation. He already had to endure more thunder tribulations than the other women. Now that something unexpected had happened to Kerlin, it was very likely that it would affect him and cause everyone else to die. Boom. Before Xiao Qin could think of a suitable countermeasure, the dark thunderclouds in the sky once again emitted a loud sound. Another lightning tribulation as thick as a water bucket came crashing down, directly striking Xiao Qin's body. Xiao Qin, who was caught off guard, involuntarily let out a scream. Even though his willpower was extremely strong, after all, he was only flesh and blood. Even though his body had been tempered thousands of times and had the cultivation of the first level of the profound ascension stage, at that moment, Xiao Qin was still struck by the thunder tribulation and spat out a mouthful of blood. It seemed that it was simply impossible to withstand such a terrible thunder tribulation alone. At this time, Xiao Qin's whole body was shrouded in a huge thunder pillar. His body was shaking like a sieve, and his facial expression was distorted to the point that it was impossible to see what his original face looked like. The pain of being struck by the thunder tribulation was simply unimaginable. In Xiao Qin's mind, the thunder tribulation in the venerable secret realm was simply a comfortable massage compared to this. Old Devil Song, why do I feel that something is wrong? Outside the altar, looking at Xiao Qin and the others who were indifferent to the thunder tribulation, Shishan Giant Ox could not help but feel a little puzzled. What's wrong? What are you mumbling about? Song Weizong frowned and asked. Those people in the array have suffered 2 thunder tribulations in a row, but they seem to be unscathed and have no reaction at all. Isn't this a little too fake? Shishan Giant Ox pointed to the array that was blocked by Xiao Chen's camouflage and expressed his surprise. Could it be that they were all killed by the Thunder Tribulation? That's why they are not moving? Recently you have been calling him Immortal Xiao. You almost praised little friend Xiao Chen to the heavens. Why are you so listless now? Song Weizong curled his lips slightly and patted the dust on his clothes. He said faintly with sarcasm, I think you're just saying it. In fact, you don't have much reverence for him. Bullshit. Shishan Giant Ox suddenly became angry and shouted with his eyes wide open, What do you know? I have great respect for exalted deity Xiao, unlike you who call him little friend all the time. Your relationship is so close. Could it be that you think your ability is more awesome than his? Every time he was faced with Song Weizong's sarcasm, Shishan Giant Bull's anger would rise uncontrollably. If it wasn't for the fact that he needed to preserve his strength in order to enter the world of cultivators, he would have killed Song Weizong, this hypocritical bastard, on the spot. Oh, if you say so. Song Weizong answered casually with a calm face. He did not care about Shishan Giant Ox's anger at all. Song Weizong was naturally very worried about the safety of Xiao Chen and the others. However, he was helpless as he was not involved in the situation. He could only close his eyes and wait silently. He could not be bothered with Shishan Giant Ox anymore. However, what the two of them did not expect was that although such a terrifying thunder tribulation had caused Xiao Chen and the women to suffer, the heavens tribulations seemed to be not satisfied with this. Not long after the second thunder tribulation ended, there was a sudden gust of wind in the array of the altar. Countless small rings of wind continued to gather and gradually formed a huge tornado, wantonly destroying their bodies and minds. Chapter 13:12. If it was just a tornado, it would not be a big deal. But at some point in time, the thunderclouds were no longer rumbling, and snowflakes were falling from the sky. With the help of the tornado, these snowflakes, which were as big as goose feathers, instantly drifted around the magic formation, causing the temperature inside the altar to drop abruptly. This made Xiao Chen and the others feel even worse. As Xiao Chen was still trying his best to resist the attack of the lightning strike, he did not have any extra yuan qi to maintain his body temperature. As the snowstorm continued to wreak havoc, the surface temperature of his body quickly dropped, and soon his whole body became ice cold. His consciousness was also starting to blur. It's so cold. Lu Shuangshuang happened to be sitting next to Xiao Chen. She could clearly feel the chill coming from Xiao Chen's palm, and she could not help but shiver. Sensing that something was wrong, Lu Shuangshuang hurriedly shouted at Lin, who was sitting on the other side of her, Don't cry. Give me your hand. Xiao Chen can't hold on any longer. If we don't enter the dual cultivation state soon, he might die. Whoa, Shuangshuang, I don't want to dual cultivate anymore. It's so cold, my hand is freezing. It was hard to tell if Lin's face was filled with tears or snow water. She sobbed and her body was tightly curled up into a ball. Her hands were tightly wrapped around her thighs, and she could not stop trembling. She did not want to continue no matter what. Lin, what's wrong with you? Hong Zhu, who was sitting on the right side of Lin, also shouted anxiously, If you don't want to die, give me your hand. Otherwise all of us will stay here today and die together with Xiao Chen. At this time Hong Zhu was also suffering from the cold. She had originally wanted to forcefully press Lin Ke's palm against her own, but after several attempts she was unable to succeed. Either it was blown away by the wind, or Lin Ke herself had retracted her hand. Seeing this, Lu Shuangshuang gritted her teeth. While the tornado was blowing to the other side, she took a deep breath to clear her mind with the cold air. Then she endured the pain and let go of Xiao Chen's hand, quickly stood up and ran towards Lin. Striding towards Lin Ke, Lu Shuangshuang forcibly pried her arms away from her thighs, then pressed her right palm against Hong Zhu's left palm. She then turned around and pressed her right palm tightly against Lin Ke's left palm. Only then did she turn around and return to her original position, leading everyone and Xiao Chen to begin their dual cultivation once again. Although everyone had already resumed their dual cultivation, Hong Zhu had been cultivating for a while, but she still could not sense Lin's aura. Moreover, it seemed that she could not transmit her devil qi to her. Hong Zhu, who had originally been a little puzzled, tilted his head to look at the motionless Lin Ke. In a flash, he suddenly understood the reason, and immediately felt a little displeased. He hurriedly shouted, Lin Kuo, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and circulate the mantra. I forgot. Boo-hoo. After the torment just now, Lin was nearly scared to death. Her soul seemed to have flown to some unknown place, and she had completely forgotten about the mantra. No matter how hard she tried, she could not recall it. This is really useless. How about this, recite it out loud after me? Hongzhu was almost driven mad by Lin. Fortunately, she had also seen the mantra that she had imparted to Ku'er and Shuang several times, so she immediately recited it aloud to Lin beside her. Lin recited the mantra after Hongzhu intermittently, but her heart was still surrounded by fear. Her emotions were fluctuating wildly, and she was unable to calm down. After trying several times, she was still unable to smoothly circulate the mantra. Lin Kuo, who was originally in a state of panic and uneasiness, now felt even more disheartened and at a loss as to what to do. Ku'er, don't be discouraged. You can definitely do it. Just as Lin was about to choose to give up, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Lin quickly turned her head to look, and saw that the voice had come from Xiao Chen, who had just regained consciousness not far away. However, Xiao Chen's expression was extremely ugly at this time. The tribulation lightning in his body had not stopped attacking him, so he had to resist the power of the lightning while also diverting his attention to comfort Lin. The little remaining yuan qi in his body was being consumed at an even faster rate. After saying those words of encouragement, Xiao Chen finally could not bear the pressure of the array and fainted. Fortunately, his mantra was still automatically circulating and was not hindered. Otherwise, the remaining few spiritual qi women would really be in trouble. Watching helplessly as Xiao Chen forced a smile on his face turned into a tightly closed eyes in the blink of an eye, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive, Lin's heart was greatly touched. She had been a cowardly and timid person since she was a child. No matter what she did, she would always shrink back, afraid that others would not be satisfied with her. It just so happened that this cautious and timid personality made it easier for others to bully her. Lin Kuo was already used to such a situation. She was used to everyone treating her as if she was invisible. She was used to others mocking her cowardice. She was used to people scolding her, but she had never received any encouragement from others. She did not know why, but Xiao Chen's simple words just now had made Lin feel as if a ray of sunshine had fallen into her heart, gradually restoring her confidence. Even Xiao Chen, who had been tormented by the heavenly tribulation to such an unbearably painful state, was doing his best to maintain the state of dual cultivation, and had even specially come to cheer her on. What else did she have to be afraid of? Taking a deep breath, Lin pulled herself together and began to loudly repeat the mnemonic formula that Hongzhu had given her. Gradually, she vaguely sensed a warm current rising in her dantian, and the circulation of her mental cultivation method was also becoming smoother and smoother. After being unconscious for an unknown period of time, Xiao Chen suddenly sensed a faint aura coming from the palm of his right hand. He, who had been like a lamp that had run out of oil, had also awakened. After that faint aura had circulated in Xiao Chen's body for a small cycle, it once again escaped from the palm of his left hand. Xiao Chen could sense that the nearly dried-up yuan qi in his body had gradually become active because of that aura. Looks like Lin Kuo is finally enlightened. Xiao Chen silently muttered to himself in his heart, finally feeling a trace of gratification. As the second aura flowed into his body, the yuan qi in Xiao Chen's body became even more active, and it began to actively absorb it. This was followed by the third and fourth aura, and with each circulation the amount of yuan qi in his body continued to increase. This also meant that dual cultivation had been restarted. Compared to the gradually awakening yuan qi, Xiao Chen's body had already reached a critical point. Just now, he had withstood the baptism of the lightning tribulation alone, as well as the onslaught of the bitter cold and heavy snow. Even though his body was as hard as a rock, it was now extremely fragile. If someone were to push a palm at him now, Xiao Chen would certainly fall to the ground without any resistance. Chapter 13:13. Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and forcibly held his body that was about to collapse. He wanted to hold on as long as possible and he didn't want to die like this. Xiao Chen knew very well that according to past experience, as long as he could hold on to this moment, there would be a huge surprise. After enduring for a while, Xiao Chen suddenly felt that the originally weak yuan qi in his body, after receiving the baptism of several auras, began to gradually expand and improve, and became more and more condensed. He could even touch the barrier of the second level of the profound ascending stage. This feeling was like a seedling that had just been in the budding state, after watering and fertilizing a few times, suddenly began to grow wildly, with a sense of vitality, and kept growing. The yuan qi that was in the growth stage was jumping up and down restlessly in Xiao Chen's body. Furthermore, it was like a black hole, taking the initiative to absorb all the lightning power it had received earlier, becoming stronger and stronger. In the end, the yuan qi didn't need to be controlled by Xiao Chen's mental cultivation method at all. It could dominate everything by itself. It felt like it temporarily took over Xiao Chen's body. Even the martial qi and demonic qi sent by the other women were directly swallowed by the yuan qi and transformed into its own energy. In a short period of time, the yuan qi had grown hundreds of times, and it was constantly expanding Xiao Chen's meridians and dantian, and it began to consciously attack the barrier of the second level of the profound ascending stage. Under the impact of the powerful yuan qi, the originally very strong barrier gradually began to crack, and as the cracks continued to increase, the pressure of the yuan qi impact also slowly increased. The autonomous consciousness of the yuan qi seemed to be quite smart. It even knew how to deploy troops. It mobilized all the new yuan qi companions in Xiao Chen's body, and together they went all out to attack the barrier of the second level of the profound ascending stage. Boom! Xiao Chen only felt a loud sound explode in his sea of consciousness. That wave of energy seemed to be cheering and celebrating its victory. Then, like a flood or a ferocious beast, it continued to tear apart the already weak and battered barrier. Until all the barriers were cleared, Xiao Chen also successfully advanced to the second level of the profound ascending stage. However, this wave of yuan qi did not stop here. It split into two and rushed out from Xiao Chen's left and right hands respectively. It surged into the other women's bodies with an earth-shattering force. Xiao Chen was suddenly shocked, but fortunately, although the yuan qi was full of momentum, it did not cause any harm to the women, but helped them wash the impurities in their bodies. After the yuan qi had its own consciousness, it seemed to have become diligent and active little hands. Xiao Chen didn't even need to take the initiative to control the dual cultivation, he just let them do it for him. After passing through each girl's body, the yuan qi would become stronger, until it went around all the girls' bodies, and then returned to Xiao Chen's body from the other end. As the yuan qi continued to shuttle back and forth, strengthening the energy, Xiao Chen felt that his sea of consciousness was constantly rumbling. The successive breakthroughs made him feel comfortable, unusually comfortable. The pain of being struck by lightning had long disappeared, even the raging snow was nothing to Xiao Chen. And Xiao Chen's improvement was also of great help to the other women. They were all driven by the yuan qi to break through their realms. Although the difference in strength was huge, they had the ability to resist the heavenly tribulation and no longer felt cold. After an unknown amount of time, the tornado and snow inside the altar's array gradually weakened, the wind gradually stopped, and the snow also slowly stopped. The dark clouds above the array slowly dispersed, revealing a clear sky. And in the altar's array, the white light became even more dazzling than before, and when the dark clouds above completely dispersed, a silver-white portal suddenly broke through the air, and instantly appeared in the middle of the altar's array. Hu! Xiao Chen let out a long breath of turbid air, slowly opened his eyes, and looked at the huge silver-white portal in front of him, finally feeling relieved. This frightening and powerful sacrificial ceremony in the immortal cultivation world was finally over. Although there were some small mistakes and problems in the middle, his luck was not bad. He clenched his teeth and persevered until the end. Not only did he gain a lot of benefits, he also successfully opened the portal. After the dual cultivation ended, Hongzhu and the other women opened their eyes one after another and sighed in relief. Seeing that the sacrificial ceremony had been a great success, their hearts were filled with indescribable joy. But as happy as they were, they did not forget that they were still in a state of vacuum. So as soon as they woke up, they hurriedly put on their clothes, then stood in the altar's array and stretched their limbs. Strangely enough, although the heavenly tribulation had wreaked havoc with lightning, gales and snowflakes, their clothes were not damaged in the slightest, not even a single snowflake had landed on them, and they looked no different from before. Hey, Kerlin, what happened to you just now? After putting on his clothes, Hongzhu recalled what had happened earlier and was instantly enraged. He angrily walked in front of Lin Kuo and glared at her as he scolded angrily, "Do you know that you nearly caused everyone's deaths?" I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, but I was really scared at the time, so I didn't know what to do. Kerlin was shocked and weakly explained. If you were scared, why didn't you say so earlier? In any case, there are already enough spiritual chi women. It doesn't matter if you're one more or one less. You should have withdrawn earlier so that you don't come in and harm everyone. You really can't do anything right, but you're good at spoiling things. Hongzhu bitterly complained. Recalling what had happened just now, Hongzhu became angry. At that time, the dual cultivation had been interrupted because of Kurlin's fear, and Xiaochen had to endure the lightning tribulation alone. They were already in the most critical situation, but this little girl still refused to continue the dual cultivation no matter what. He had tried to pull Kurlin's hand several times, but he had failed every time. If not for Lu Shuangshuang's help, the entire sacrificial ceremony might have failed because of her, and everyone would have died on the spot. Kurlin bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes, but she did not say anything. Quarreling had always been Kurlin's weakness, and she also felt guilty in her heart, so she did not refute Hongzhu. Hongzhu, your words are too hurtful. At this time, Lu Shuangshuang, who was standing to the side, could not bear to watch any longer and stood up for Kurlin. Chapter 13-14. Lu Shuangshuang looked at Hongzhu and angrily said, "It's everyone's first time participating in the sacrificial ceremony, so it's unavoidable to be nervous. Besides, everyone is now safe and sound. Is there a need to target Kuer like this?" As Kurlin's childhood companion, Lu Shuangshuang also knew that she was a little timid, but Hongzhu's words were a little too much. "What? You're not going to be blamed for doing something wrong?" When Hongzhu saw that there were still people speaking up for Kurlin, he couldn't help but frown and angrily say, "I've already warned everyone that if anyone doesn't have full confidence, they shouldn't blindly participate in this sacrificial ceremony. Besides, what I said just now was not wrong. Even if she doesn't participate in the sacrificial ceremony, the number of spiritual energy women is already enough." There was a reason behind Hongzhu's words. It turned out that a few days ago, when the Hong and Song families had gathered together, they had specially made a precise calculation of the number of people participating in the sacrificial ceremony. From the results of the calculation, the total number of spiritual energy women from the Immortal Cultivation faction, Ghost Cultivation faction, and Awakening Heaven sect was already enough to open the door to the cultivation world. Moreover, this number was also a fluctuating range, meaning that even if one or two people were to participate, it wouldn't have much of an impact on the sacrificial ceremony. However, if there were more spiritual energy women, it might be able to better guarantee the success rate of the sacrificial ceremony. When Hongzhu came to this conclusion, he had carefully considered it. Among the spiritual energy women present, Lu Shuangshuang and Kurlin couldn't be considered as cultivators. Although Kurlin's body was full of spiritual energy, if she rashly participated in the sacrificial ceremony, it was very likely that some unpredictable situations would occur, which could easily affect the overall situation. As for Lan Xinxin, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Although she was only at the beginning of the path of cultivation, the Wang family of Tianfang province was originally an ancient martial arts family, so the younger generation of the family more or less had cultivation experience. Moreover, she had a relatively carefree personality, so there shouldn't be any inexplicable problems. In any case, at the time of the evaluation, Hongzhu believed that Lan Xinxin was much more reliable than Kurlin, so he had specially looked for the three of them and asked them their opinions. In the end, the three of them looked at each other and decided to insist on participating in the sacrificial ceremony. Lu Shuangshuang did not want to stand aside and watch as Xiaochen participated in the sacrificial ceremony. On the other hand, Kurlin thought about how Hongzhu had helped her parents so much just so that she could participate in the ceremony. It would be too unkind of her to withdraw now. Lan Xinxin, on the other hand, saw that the other two women were participating, and she had no reason to withdraw, so she readily agreed. When Hongzhu saw that the three girls had actually chosen to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, it was not good for him to try to persuade them otherwise. However, there was still a faint trace of worry in his heart. He had not expected that the result would still be as she had predicted. "Elder sister, that's enough. Since the sacrificial ceremony has been successful, you should speak less." Hong Yan also walked over at this moment, pulled Hongzhu's sleeve, and dissuaded her in a low voice. Hong Yan, on the other hand, felt quite sympathetic towards Kurlin. After all, this was the first time this little lass had learned about the sacrificial ceremony. It was already very good for her to be able to do this much. I just can't take it anymore. Fortunately, Xiaochen woke up later and even took us to dual cultivate together. Otherwise, we would have all died here today. Hongzhu's anger had not yet subsided and he was still very unhappy when he looked at Kerlin. In fact, Hongzhu had her own reasons for being angry. She had always been very resistant to the sacrificial ceremony since she was young and had always been planning how to extricate herself from this matter. Later on, due to a series of coincidences, she had finally made up her mind to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, but she had never expected that such a dangerous situation would still occur. How could she not be angry? Forget it, Hongzhu. You can't blame Kerlin for this matter. She's already worked very hard. In fact, I was also a little distracted just now. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Xiao Chen had just finished sensing the condition of his body when he discovered that the girls had actually started arguing. He hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over. Tisish prioritizing a lover over a friend. Hongzhu curled her lips and muttered in a low voice. However, she did not say anything else. In truth, she was just venting the fear and dissatisfaction in her heart. She did not really want to do anything to Kerlin. Xiao Chen chuckled and turned around to hold Kerlin's hand. He gently comforted her. I was a little anxious just now and my words were a little harsh. Please don't take it to heart. This is the first time that everyone is participating in the sacrificial ceremony, so it's inevitable that something might happen. Hongzhu was just too worried and confused. Please don't take it to heart. Kerlin's face blushed slightly as she nodded her head. Her heart was moved. Kerlin had originally thought that Xiao Chen would also teach her a lesson since he was the one who had been the most implicated. She did not expect that he would comfort her instead. She could not calm her emotions and did not even notice that her hand was being held by Xiao Chen. Alright, since everyone is fine, let's go out. There must be a lot of people waiting for us outside. Don't let them worry too much. Xiao Chen did not have any other thoughts at this moment. He smiled faintly and let go of Kerlin's hand. He then winked at Hongzhu. Hongzhu rolled her eyes at Xiao Chen in annoyance and turned her back to him. Seeing this, Xiao Chen knew that this girl's anger had mostly subsided and that she was just putting on airs. He helplessly shook his head and smiled. After everyone had put on their clothes, Xiao Chen removed the barriers and concealment spells around them and let everyone out. As he turned his head to look at the silver-white portal, Xiao Chen frowned slightly as a question circled in his mind. He could clearly sense that this portal contained an enormous amount of energy. It should have been brought about by the sacrificial ceremony that they had just performed. However, at this moment, that energy was constantly weakening. Compared to the energy that the portal itself possessed, the weakening energy was almost indiscernible. However, after a long period of time, it would inevitably be exhausted. For a moment, Xiao Chen could not figure out what the reason was. His initial deduction was that Kerlin might have been disconnected during the process, which led to this situation. However, there was no way to stop the continuous loss of energy now. They could only find all the people who had entered the world of cultivators as soon as possible so that everyone could enter as soon as possible. Outside the altar's magical formation, Qing Minjing and the other girls were looking in this direction with their heads raised. When they saw that Xiao Chen and the others had walked out safely, their hearts were finally at ease. The terrifying thunder tribulation and the tornado just now almost scared them to death. Jin Beibei and Tian Wangchuan were shocked from time to time, while Qing Minjing, who was standing next to them, was secretly breaking out in a cold sweat. If the eldest miss knew that Kerlin was accidentally disconnected during the process of dual cultivation, she would probably be furious like Hongzhu. Chapter 13-15. Xiao Chen naturally knew Qing Minjing's temper, so he did not mention Kerlin's situation after he came out. He only briefly described the sacrificial process. The other women also knew Xiao Chen's intention, so they also did not say anything. Xiao Chen comforted the women who were worried about the whole process. Then he looked for Shishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong, ready to discuss the next step of entering the portal. Immortal Xiao, you are really amazing. Shishan Giant Ox gave a thumbs up with a look of admiration. He smiled and complimented, I didn't expect this heaven's retribution to be so powerful. We have never heard of or seen it before. Just now, Old Devil Song and I were just watching from a distance and we were particularly frightened. I didn't expect Immortal Xiao to be so powerful that he could resolve it so easily. Song Weizong also admired Xiao Chen in his heart. However, he was born with a sense of pride, so he only nodded slightly in agreement and did not follow suit. Hello, Xiao Chen, I am the master of the Hong family, Hong Dingwei. On the other hand, an old man in red next to Song Weizong looked at Xiao Chen with admiration. He first introduced himself, then sighed from the bottom of his heart, "It's all thanks to your help this time. Otherwise, with just us old bones and those few women with low cultivation bases, we definitely wouldn't have been able to successfully open the door to the world of cultivation." "Master Hong, you flatter me. I just did a little bit of my strength." Xiao Qin said a few simple pleasantries. He was still worried about the problem of the energy decline of the portal, so he stopped chatting and directly suggested, "Since the portal has been opened, why don't we arrange for the relevant personnel to go in first? If there is anything else, we can talk after entering the world of immortal cultivation. What do you think, Master Hong?" "No problem, I will naturally listen to Xiao Chen's instructions." Hong Dingwei agreed with a smile. Thinking that he could enter the world of immortal cultivation soon, Hong Dingwei could not help but feel excited. He thought that he was already old and probably would not have the chance to enter in his lifetime. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, his lifelong wish was about to be realized. "Since that's the case, let's gather everyone." Xiao Qin nodded. After thinking for a while, he added, "For the sake of fairness, we will arrange for 3 people to go in together each time. 1 person from the Awakening Heaven sect, 1 person from the Immortal Cultivation sect, and 1 person from the Ghost Cultivation sect. No one will object, right?" The reason why Xiao Qin suggested this was because he was not sure how long this temporary portal could last. Although the ancient book said that there were 20 to 30 slots, no one knew how many people could actually enter. What if all the people from one of the sects went in first and the portal suddenly closed? Wouldn't the remaining sects suffer a great loss? Hong Dingwei and Song Weizong discussed in low voices for a while, and both expressed their willingness to follow Xiao Chen's arrangements. Moreover, this was indeed the most reasonable and no one would be at a disadvantage. Shishan Giant Ox was actually not very happy in his heart, because only 6 people from the Awakening Heaven sect were going to enter the immortal cultivation world. If 1 person from each of the 3 sects went in, the Awakening Heaven sect would inevitably be the first to enter, and a few people from the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect would stay behind. However, if he raised this point, it would mean that he would openly oppose Xiao Chen's opinion. Shishan Giant Ox had just witnessed Xiao Chen's strength to resist the heaven's retribution. How could he dare to be rash? Besides, the 2 old guys from the Immortal Cultivation sect had no objection, so he naturally could not object. Seeing that both sides had no objection, Xiao Chen looked back at the portal. After thinking for a while, he said, "Well, let's hurry up. The first person to enter the Awakening Heaven sect is Miss Cheng Menjing. You guys quickly choose the people to enter. After you have chosen, everyone can start to act." Shishan Giant Ox and Song Weizong hurriedly arranged their own people. Cheng Menjing, who was standing behind Xiao Qin, felt quite puzzled when she heard his distribution. She could not help but ask doubtfully, "Xiao Qin, why do you want me to go first? Shouldn't you go in first to explore the way? Your cultivation is much higher than mine." The immortal cultivation world was an unknown existence. Miss Cheng Menjing always felt that it would be very dangerous inside. If she encountered trouble after entering and Xiao Qin was not by her side, what should she do? "Miss, don't worry. If you encounter danger, you first use your mental cultivation method to run away. I will find a way to meet up with you." Xiao Qin comforted Cheng Menjing. "Well, you have the final say anyway." Cheng Menjing did not understand why Xiao Qin did not choose to enter the immortal cultivation world to wait for her. However, she still obediently agreed. Xiao Qin knew the confusion in Cheng Menjing's heart. He looked around and pulled her to the side. He lowered his voice and said to her, "I have to stay until the end because I have to keep an eye on the Ghost Cultivation sect. I have to prevent their people from taking advantage of this opportunity to make a move." So it's like that. Then you be careful." Cheng Menjing finally understood the reason. Although she was somewhat depressed, what Xiao Qin said was not without reason. If she waited for him to enter the transfer gate, and the Ghost Cultivation sect's people really had evil intentions, she would definitely not be able to deal with them. "You don't have to worry. With my current strength, I can kill all the people from the Ghost Cultivation sect with a casual move of my finger. I can even help them dig their graves." Xiao Qin revealed a mysterious smile and replied confidently, "Che, you're just bragging. Anyway, you don't need to pay taxes for bragging." Cheng Menjing rolled her eyes at Xiao Qin. However, even though she said that, Cheng Menjing still trusted him very much. She just did not know how high Xiao Chen's current strength was. In fact, Xiao Qin was not lying. He was not speaking without thinking. With his current strength, if he wanted to destroy the entire Ghost Cultivation sect, other than Shishan Giant Cow, he would need to spend a little effort to get rid of it. There was no other reason. Just now, when Xiaoqun was helping the female priests, he broke through to the second level of the profound ascending stage with great difficulty. Later on, he broke through all the obstacles like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. With the help of the yuan qi accumulated during the dual cultivation, he benefited from the disaster and was pushed to the peak of the sixth level of the profound ascending stage. Therefore, if Xiaoqun really wanted to destroy the ghost cultivation sect, it would be a piece of cake. Looking at Cheng Minjing's cute pout, Xiaoqun smiled faintly and gently rubbed her hair. In fact, Xiaoqun had another reason that he did not say. He could feel that the energy of the transfer gate was very unstable. Therefore he had to stay at the scene. In case something happened later, he could think of a way to hold on for a while. What Xiaoqun was most concerned about at the moment was not the ghost cultivation sect messing around. Instead, if the transfer gate suddenly closed and he did not have time to enter, how could he open it again? Chapter 13-16. However, Xiaoqun did not intend to tell Cheng Minjing about this puzzling question, lest she would be hurt by him again. Cheng Minjing took a deep breath. After saying goodbye to Jean Bebe and the other girls briefly, she walked to the portal. After hesitating for a moment, she finally gritted her teeth, closed her eyes and stepped into the portal. Then a white light suddenly flashed, and Cheng Minjing's figure disappeared in the portal instantly. The Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect had also finished their arrangements at this moment. The former chose to send Hong Dingwei to enter first, while the latter chose to send their leader, West Mountain Giant Bull, as the vanguard. The two of them stood in front of the portal and looked at each other. Then they stepped into the portal expressionlessly and disappeared in the white light silently. Seeing that West Mountain Giant Bull and Hong Dingwei entered the portal at the same time, Xiaoqun finally felt a little relieved. Originally, Xiaoqun was worried that West Mountain Giant Bull would suddenly attack Cheng Minjing after entering the world of immortal cultivation and threaten him to give in by capturing her. However, since Hong Dingwei was here now, he thought that he would not sit by and do nothing. Miss Cheng's safety could still be guaranteed. However, to Xiaoqun's surprise, when Cheng Minjing, Hong Dingwei and West Mountain Giant Bull stepped into the portal, he could clearly feel that the energy of the portal suddenly weakened a lot, and the entire portal seemed to be a little smaller. After thinking for a while, Xiaoqun finally understood why the energy of the portal kept weakening. It was not because Kurlin's dual cultivation was interrupted just now, but because the portal was originally a body of energy. Originally, it needed to consume a small amount of energy to maintain the state of the portal. Every time a person was teleported away, a part of the energy would be consumed instantly. Xiaoqun made a simple calculation based on the energy consumption of Cheng Minjing and the other two. He found that they had to hurry up. Otherwise, it was very likely that the portal would run out of energy and close before all 30 of them could enter. Of course, apart from Xiaoqun, no one else noticed the slight change in the energy and volume at all. They continued to arrange the candidates and lined up in front of the teleportation gate in an orderly manner, walking in according to the sequence. Tang Tang, Song Weizong and Mad Devil of Shishan entered the portal for the second time. As Xiaoqun expected, after the three of them entered, the energy of the portal weakened a lot. Xiaoqun furrowed his brows. He first instructed everyone to speed up and make the best use of the time to line up and enter the arena. Then he called Miss Xing over. Sect Leader Xing, after I go to the world of cultivation, Jean Bebe and the others will be in your care. Xiaoqun said with a smile as he looked at the girl walking towards him. What did you say? I will take care of them? Miss Xing thought that there was something wrong with her ears. She looked at Xiaoqun in surprise. Yes. Xiaoqun nodded. He pointed at Jean Bebe and the others and said with a smile, After all, you are a few years older than them. You have better life experience and adaptability. Although concubine Xia is also like a big sister, I think you are more reliable. You know the reason. Actually, among all the girls, Xia Fei was the oldest. If it wasn't for the fact that she always stared at the girls lecherously, teased them from time to time, and even tried to take advantage of them, Xiaoqun would really be willing to let her be the big sister. But, can I really do that? Miss Xing was in disbelief. She had not come back to herself from the shock yet. Although she would treat Jean Bebe and the other girls well even if Xiaoqun had not asked for it, it was beyond Miss Xing's expectation that Xiaoqun would entrust them to her voluntarily. Miss Xing thought to herself, does it mean that I have been appointed as his first wife since Xiaoqun chose me to take on such an important task? Of course you can. You must believe in your own abilities. Seeing that Miss Xing seemed to be secretly enjoying herself but trying to hold it back, Xiaochen was rather confused. He did not know what was wrong with her, but he did not think too much of it and simply encouraged her. After pondering for a moment, Xiaochen pointed at the bay's spiritual beast that was pacing back and forth not too far away. He said to Miss Xing, "Oh right, you can use that big white horse. You've ridden it before anyway, so you know how to control it. Although this fella is a little dumb and looks a little stupid, it's quite fast. It'll be great to use as a means of transportation." Nay, although it was a little far from Xiaochen, the bay's spiritual beast's ears were still very sensitive. It happened to hear Xiaochen bad-mouthing it, so it immediately neighed at him unhappily and shook its head forcefully. Obviously it was protesting. "Oh, I got it." Xing Chick was still immersed in the joy of becoming the first wife. Xiaochen's words went in one ear and out the other. She only nodded and giggled. After Xiaochen was done giving instructions, he glared at the bay's spiritual beast and turned to observe the situation at the teleportation gate. He was chatting with Miss Xing just now, so he did not bother to see who was going through the teleportation gate first. Now it was the Heavenly Awakening Gate's turn. Xiaochen fixed his eyes and saw that the one who was going through the teleportation gate this time was Jia Tuyao, who had been silent and had no sense of existence before. Standing in front of the teleportation gate, Jia Tuyao glanced at Xiaochen resentfully and unwillingly. Obviously he still held a grudge against him. Jiayudo chose to let Jia Tuyao enter the immortal cultivation world and fight hard. In fact, Jia Tuyao also approved of it. Now that he was being ignored by everyone in the family, it was not a good feeling. If he could make a name for himself in the immortal cultivation world, it would not be impossible for him to take back the power of the Jia family. However, after arriving at the Heavenly Awakening Gate, Jia Tuyao found out that this trip to the immortal cultivation world actually involved Xiaochen. Jia Tuyao, who originally wanted to find an opportunity to ride on the Heavenly Awakening Gate's coattails, immediately stopped and did not dare to do anything. He could only choose to temporarily keep a low profile and hide among the crowd, for fear that Xiaochen would vent his anger on him. However, now that he was about to enter the immortal cultivation world, no matter how powerful Xiaochen was, he could not do anything to him. Naturally, Jia Tuyao revealed all the resentment hidden in the bottom of his heart. In Jia Tuyao's view, no matter how powerful Xiaochen was, he would be nothing in the immortal cultivation world. The immortal cultivation world was full of dangers. A guy like Xiaochen, who was arrogant and domineering, might be killed the moment he entered the immortal cultivation world. Naturally, Xiaochen would not take Jia Tuyao's provocation seriously. This guy's purpose of entering the immortal cultivation world was as obvious as a dot of ink on a piece of white paper. He thought that no one could see it. Chapter 13-17. However, Xiaochen had his own considerations about Jia Tuyao. If Jia Tuyao was thrown into the immortal cultivation world, he would not have the opportunity to do evil in the Jia family. In this way, Jia Muzin would not be able to smoothly take over the Jia family. As for Jia Tuyao, after he entered the immortal cultivation world, Xiaochen was too lazy to do anything to him. He would just let him run his own course. Xiaochen really did not believe that this kind of guy with a lack of intelligence would suddenly become successful. After Jia Tuyao entered the portal, another person from the Ghost Cultivation sect and another person from the Immortal Cultivation sect entered. Then Yu Xiaochuan stood in front of the portal and waved happily at Xiaochen, which was a sharp contrast to Jia Tuyao's attitude just now. Xiaochen also responded with a smile, but the smile was a little forced. At this time he could clearly feel that Yu Xiaochuan had a lot of interest in him since he practiced the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book. Was it really like the name of the secret book, that people who practiced it would only have feelings for chrysanthemums in the future? But why did it have to be him? For this point, Xiaochen had always been puzzled, but there was no good way to solve it at the moment. He could only enter the immortal cultivation world and take it one step at a time. After Gong Sun Yen also entered the portal, all the members of the awakening sect except for Xiaochen had entered. As more and more people entered the immortal cultivation world, Xiaochen's expression became more and more serious. He could feel that the energy consumption of the portal was getting faster and faster. Obviously, it was not enough for all the remaining people to enter. Xiaochen looked around. West Mountain Giant Ox and West Mountain Mad Devil of the Ghost Cultivation sect had entered first. Nie Xiaoyu, an old demon of West Mountain, had also passed through the portal. The remaining people were passers-by that Xiaochen did not know. Some of them were the guys who laughed at Yu Xiaochuan just now. At this time, their faces were full of tension and excitement. Among the cultivation sects, the patriarchs of the Hong family and the Song family had already disappeared. Song Qingshu and third young master Hong, whom he had met in the Venerable Realm last time, had also entered one after another. The last person to enter was a woman in black. Hong Zhu, Li Xiener, and a few other younger disciples of the cultivation sects remained at the portal. Xiaoqin took a few steps towards the portal and stared at it without blinking. At this time it was the cultivator's turn. Li Xiener took 2 steps forward, stood in front of the transfer gate and took a deep breath. Then, with a resolute expression, she stepped through the gate. With a flash of white light, she disappeared. The light of the portal visibly fluctuated, and the energy suddenly decreased by a large amount. Xiaoqian's expression changed. He could clearly feel that the portal was about to reach its critical point. He estimated that it could only accommodate 1 or 2 people at most. After that, it would inevitably close. At this time, a thin and small evil cultivator from the Ghost Cultivation sect slowly walked towards the portal. Xiaoqin pondered for a moment and made a decision. He used his movement technique and quickly rushed towards the portal. When they passed by Hongzhu, Xiaoqin even turned around and shouted at her, "Let's go!" Hongzhu was stunned. Then she saw Xiaoqin rush to the portal, push away the thin evil cultivator who was about to enter, and enter the portal himself. In an instant he disappeared. What the F***CK? What's going on? Didn't we agree that it would be one sect's turn each time? Which sect is this guy from? Why did he go in first? The Ghost Cultivation sect disciple who had been pushed to the ground immediately flew into a rage. He stood up, pointed at the portal and shouted angrily, "Your spot has been taken. It's my turn next." Just as the skinny evil cultivator was cursing, the disciple behind him, who was originally in line, shouted. He naturally wanted to rush into the portal. F***CK your mother's leg. I haven't entered yet. How can you have a spot? How could the thin evil cultivator let him go first? While cursing, he hurriedly rushed into the portal. You were the one who was robbed. What does it have to do with me? I should be the next one to enter. The cultivator grabbed the thin evil cultivator and tried to rush in before him. Don't talk nonsense with me. If I can't enter, don't even think about entering. Although the skinny evil cultivator looked weak, his strength was not small. He simply grabbed the clothes of the cultivator sect's disciple and refused to let him go. At this time, the disciples of the 2 sects who were waiting behind saw the deadlock in front of them couldn't help but start to complain and insult each other. Originally, the 2 sects had accumulated hatred and friction for a long time. At this time, the sect leaders or elders of the 2 sects, and the situation was getting out of control. The skinny evil cultivator and the disciples of the cultivation sects pushed and shoved each other. No one knew who punched the other first, but the already angry crowd instantly became entangled in a fight. Dust flew everywhere and the whole scene was extremely chaotic. Seeing Xiaoqin rush out and disappear into the portal, Hongzhu, who was standing at the back, was stunned for a moment. What happened? Recalling how Xiaoqin had yelled at her and told her to hurry up and leave, Hongzhu's eyes turned and he suddenly came to his senses. He realized that the situation might be a little off, so he couldn't be bothered to pay any more attention to the disciples of both sides who were fighting in full swing. He immediately used his movement skill and circled around the scene of the fight. He arrived in front of the portal and with a leap, he directly jumped into it. After Hongzhu entered, the portal shook violently. Finally, its energy was exhausted and it began to slowly close. When the disciples of the Immortal and Ghost Cultivation sects saw this, they all wanted to get a share of the loot before the portal closed. They desperately tried to rush in, but the opponents beside them were unwilling. They pulled and pulled each other and for a time they were all held back, unable to enter. Just as the portal closed halfway, a white shadow suddenly flashed in front of the struggling disciples. That white shadow passed by them and rushed straight into the portal. Everyone turned their heads in unison and saw that the white shadow had squeezed into the portal just as it was about to close. However, because it was too big, although the front half of the white shadow had squeezed in, the back half of the white shadow was stuck in the portal. When everyone saw this scene, they were a little stunned. Little girl Xing, who was standing at the side, was also stunned. When she looked over, she realized that the person who was risking his life to enter the immortal world was not a person, but a horse. Furthermore, judging from the horse's butt that was constantly twisting and struggling outside the portal, this was clearly the big white horse that Xiaoqin had mentioned to give to her as a mount. Little girl Xing was a little confused. What was going on with this horse? Why would it suddenly make such a move? Could it be that it had seen Xiaoqin leave and missed him so much that it wanted to follow him in? Chapter 13-18. However, there was no time for Miss Xing to think too much. Because it was stuck by Zay's but the transfer gate could not be closed. Because the transfer gate could not be closed, the array on the ground began to emit green smoke. Furthermore, there were a few bolts of blue and purple lightning flashing back and forth near the transfer gate, emitting a sizzling sound. From the looks of it, if this were to continue, the entire spell formation would very likely explode. The situation was urgent, but the disciples of the Immortal Cultivation sect and Ghost Cultivation sect were still in a daze. Their brains had short-circuited. Miss Xing naturally could not sit by and do nothing. Even though she did not know how powerful the explosion would be, she was not willing to take this risk. Frowning, Miss Xing decisively activated her mental cultivation technique and gathered demonic qi in her palms. Then she pushed towards Zay's butt. Bang! Following the muffled sound of a collision, Zay's lower body was finally sent into the transfer gate by Miss Xing's palm. With a flash of white light, it disappeared. At the same time, the transfer gate closed and disappeared into thin air without a trace. It was as if it had never been there in the first place. At the same time, the disciples of the Immortal Cultivation sect and Ghost Cultivation sect saw that they could no longer enter the cultivation world and seemed to have woken up again. They all sighed in disappointment and stopped fighting. Then they sat down on the ground in a daze, not knowing what to do next. Wow! This is great, I finally entered at the last moment. Seeing a flash of white light, Zay, who had already returned to its original appearance, was overjoyed. It raised its head to the sky and let out a long roar. Xiaoqin, just you wait. Once I successfully raise my cultivation, I will definitely find you and teach you a good lesson. Zay remembered the humiliation of being used as a mount by Xiaoqin. At this moment, it had already thought of 108 ways to torture Xiaoqin. Oh, that's right. Also, the fellow who used demonic qi to hit my butt. Even though I didn't see your face, I will come back for you sooner or later. Zay felt a burning pain on its butt and couldn't help but mutter to itself, when that time comes, I will also let you have a taste of being spanked. Humph. In a forest on the outskirts of a remote place in the Immortal Cultivation world, a gust of wind suddenly blew past. After the gale subsided, the sky became overcast, and lightning flashed and thunder roared, as if a thunderstorm was about to happen. Then in an open space in the forest, a silver-white light that looked like lightning appeared out of thin air, tearing the space apart and gradually forming the shape of a portal. After the portal appeared, two figures gradually emerged from it. The former was Xiaoqin, who had seized the last opportunity to rush into the portal, while the latter was Hongzhu, who had followed closely behind him and picked up the spoils. After sending the two of them to the surface of the forest, the portal slowly closed and disappeared. But who hit my head? Before Hongzhu could steady himself, he felt something smashing into the back of his head. Caught off guard, he couldn't help but cry out in pain. Turning his head to look, Hongzhu discovered that there was no one behind him, only a bulging bundle that had fallen to the ground, rolled a few times before coming to a stop not far away. He couldn't help but ask in bewilderment, "What is this?" "This is the culprit that smashed into you just now," Xiaoqin, who was in front, casually replied. When he had turned around to look at the portal, he had just happened to see the bundle fly out with a whoosh before the portal closed, accurately smashing into Hongzhu's head. Hongzhu pursed his lips in boredom, then walked over and picked up the bundle. He opened it and found that it was filled with top-grade natural treasures. Slightly confused, he tilted his head and thought for a moment, then muttered to himself, I feel like I've seen this bundle somewhere before, but I can't remember where. Let me see. Xiaoqin took a few steps closer, swept his gaze across the bundle, and said with sudden understanding, "Oh, these are the heavenly treasures that I had collected in the Venerable One's secret realm. However, I remember that I had hung this bundle around the neck of the Baizé spiritual beast. How did it end up here?" After thinking for a while, Xiaoqin guessed that little Xing must have thrown it here before the portal closed so that these items could be put to use in the cultivation world. After making this deduction, Xiaoqin didn't think too much about it. He simply tied up the bundle and put it away, then began to look around. After carefully observing his surroundings, Xiaoqin couldn't find any traces of Qing Menjiang and the others. Even the great ox of the Western Mountain and Song Weizong were nowhere to be seen. He was immediately very surprised. Logically speaking, before he arrived they shouldn't have run around, especially Cheng Menjing and Tang Tang. They should have been waiting for him. But now he couldn't see a single one of them. What was going on? Little brother Xiaochen, where are the others? Could it be that they couldn't wait for us so they left first? Hongzhu didn't have much interest in the treasures of heaven and earth. He stood up and looked around and also found something wrong. At this time the two of them were in an extremely desolate jungle. Apart from the withered branches and trees around them, it was completely deserted and empty. Not to mention the people who had been teleported here before, even an ordinary beast could not be seen. Impossible. They are unfamiliar with this place. How dare they act casually? Xiaochen shook his head and flatly denied Hongzhu's statement. The reason why Xiaochen was so sure was that he knew both the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect better. Song Weizong and the others were upright, relatively organized and disciplined. They were also more peaceful and steady. Before Xiaochen came in they would definitely not act blindly. On the other hand, the group of people from the Ghost Cultivation sect were the kind of people who wanted to do evil but had no guts. Although Shishan Giant Ox had come here before, he had always been in awe of the Immortal Cultivation world. Moreover, he was afraid of Xiaochen's crushing strength, so he wouldn't rashly choose to leave. Naturally, he could only wait for Xiaochen, the leader, to come in before making any plans. As for Yu Xiaochuan and Cheng Menjing, there was no need to mention them. They had always regarded Xiaochen as the core, so it was absolutely impossible for them to leave first. If they didn't leave first because they couldn't wait, then could it be? Hongzhu frowned slightly. He didn't finish his words, but his expression was a little uneasy. Probably not. Although Hongzhu didn't finish his words, Xiaochen already knew what he was trying to say. Those people didn't leave of their own accord. So, unless something special happened, they were forced to leave. Chapter 13-19. However, Xiaochen had already carefully observed the scene just now and did not find any signs of a fight. Cheng Menjing and the other women did not leave any signs behind either. This place was so desolate that it was unrealistic for someone to wait here and capture them, so the possibility of them being coerced was next to none. If they didn't leave on their own and they weren't captured, then how did they disappear? Hongzhu was a little discouraged as she pouted and said in a slightly peeved tone, "Could it be that they suddenly grew wings and flew away together?" There's another possibility. Xiaochen pondered for a while, rubbing his chin as he analyzed. After all, this is the first time we've opened this portal, so no one knows what will happen after we enter. Perhaps everyone was sent to different places after crossing over, and scattered around the area. Then why did I end up in the same place as you? Hongzhu asked in confusion. Suddenly, she giggled and glanced coquettishly at Xiaochen as she said, "Could it be that this portal wants us to have a world of just the two of us?" Black lines immediately appeared on Xiaochen's forehead as he said, "It's also possible that we happened to be in a group of two and were teleported to a certain place. The two of us happened to be the last ones to enter, so we ended up in the same place." After ruling out the possibility that the people before him had left on their own or had been coerced, Xiaochen could not think of any other possibilities. He could only speculate that everyone had landed in different places after crossing through the portal. If he looked around the area, he might be able to find traces of them. "Alright, let's look around then." Hongzhu stretched lazily. Suddenly, he recalled Xiaochen's abnormal behavior before entering the teleportation gate. He moved closer to Xiaochen's ear and whispered with a mischievous smile, "Right, little brother Xiaochen, you suddenly rushed into the teleportation gate just now. Did you already notice that the teleportation gate is about to close?" "Yes." Feeling an unbearable itch after being blown on by someone, coupled with Hongzhu's seductive voice, Xiaochen knew that this little girl was starting to play tricks again. He could only helplessly nod his head in response. "Little brother Xiaochen, you're in the wrong here. Why didn't you tell big sister earlier when you discovered something?" Hongzhu rebuked as she poked Xiaochen's head. "Didn't I tell you? I told you to leave before I went in." Xiaochen protested innocently. "You only shouted that one word. Who knows what you're saying?" Hongzhu coquettishly rolled her eyes at Xiaochen before she proudly puffed out her chest. She pinched Xiaochen's nose and said with a smile, "Fortunately, big sister is smart and quick-witted. I followed you in just in time. Otherwise, I would have been thrown off by a bad boy like you." Hongzhu, stop messing around. Xiaochen gently pushed Hongzhu's finger away and said with a slight headache, I think we should leave this place first and meet up with the others as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they run into any trouble, it will be hard to solve when the time comes. Xiaoqun really had no idea how to deal with Hongzhu's teasing. He simply felt that this little girl was a little too undisciplined. What kind of situation was this? Yet she still had the mood to think about such messy things. They can't see you anyway, so they won't run around blindly. What are you in such a hurry for? Hongzhu curled her lips. She was very bored by Xiaoqun's lack of interest. She looked around and suggested with great interest, "Why don't we take advantage of this opportunity where no one is around and have some fun in the wild? This big sister has never had any wild sex before." Cough cough cough. I don't think this suggestion is very good. Let's talk about it later. Xiaoqun choked and coughed repeatedly. His face had turned red. He naturally did not dare to take the initiative to respond to Hongzhu's challenge. He hastily put away the bag containing the natural treasures and quickly left in a random direction. It was as if he had run into a ferocious beast and was fleeing in panic. "Sai, you're really unromantic. How boring." When Hongzhu saw that Xiaoqun did not take the bait, he also lost interest in continuing to tease him. He leisurely followed behind Xiaoqun and plucked a green foxtail grass from God knows where. He teased Xiaoqun while admiring the surrounding scenery. As Xiaoqun was not sure of the location of Qing Minjing and the other women, nor was he clear about the size of this forest, he could only release his divine sense to the greatest extent possible to explore. Moreover, he remained vigilant at all times so that he could deal with any unexpected situations that might arise at any time. However, what was strange was that after Xiaoqun circled back and forth and covered the entire forest with his divine sense, he did not find any trace of Qing Minjing and the other women. Moreover, he did not even find any trace of the people from the Immortal Cultivation sect or the Ghost Cultivation sect. Xiaoqun frowned deeply. He felt a little uneasy in his heart. Could it be that the situation was different from what he had imagined? Could it be that the eldest miss and the others had really been captured by the people from the Immortal Cultivation world? But that didn't make sense either. If it was as he had inferred and they had been teleported here in groups of 2, it would be impossible for all of them to be captured at once. There must have been some traces left behind. If it was because he had entered too late and the others were all captured together, then it was even more unrealistic. Big Miss and Yu Xiaoqun were both real cultivators. Unless the opponent's level was extremely high enough to make them lose the ability to resist, either of them would be able to resist for a while when they encountered the enemy. How could they be so easily defeated by the enemy? Taking a step back, even if the people from the Immortal Cultivation world had sent a large number of experts to specifically capture the people who had been teleported here from the inner martial world, how did they know that someone would coincidentally be teleported to this place at this moment? It must be known that there was no channel for information transmission between the Immortal Cultivation world and the inner martial world. After all, they were two completely different existences. Otherwise, the Immortal Cultivation sect and the Ghost Cultivation sect would not have spent so much effort to study ancient books for so long and finally deduced the method to use the teleportation gate. Xiaoqun, we've already wandered around for 2 hours. Why haven't we met anyone else yet? Could it be that they've all? Hongzhu, who was walking behind Xiaoqun, hesitated for a long time before he finally spoke with a grave expression. At this moment, she finally realized that the situation was a little strange. She gradually lost the mood to play and threw the green foxtail grass to the side. She did not dare to lower her guard anymore. It can't be. Although there are many experts in the Immortal Cultivation world and people with outstanding strength can be found everywhere, Song Weizong and Shishan Giant Ox are not easy to deal with. Furthermore, Qing Minjing and the other's strength is not low either. So I think they should have been teleported to a place that is relatively far away. Xiaoqun replied cautiously. Chapter 13:20. Although he said so, in truth Xiaoqun did not have much confidence in himself. After all, this was his first time in the world of immortal cultivators and he was not very familiar with this place, so he did not dare to jump to any conclusions. Hongzhu nodded. She could naturally tell that Xiaoqun was trying to comfort her, but she did not expose him. Instead, she secretly prayed in her heart, hoping that everyone would be safe. As the two continued walking, the trees began to grow sparse. Not far away they seemed to have reached the edge of the forest. Xiaoqun suddenly stopped, closed his eyes and sensed with rapt attention for a moment. Seeing this, Hongzhu was just about to ask, when Xiaoqun opened his eyes and pointed in a certain direction to the east, saying, I've discovered some movements about 3 kilometers to the east, but they don't seem to be our people. Since we can't find them, let's go over there and take a look. It turned out that when they had arrived at this location, Xiao Chen's divine sense, which had already expanded to its limit, had suddenly sensed some houses in the distance. It seemed to be a town and there was a bustling crowd inside. However, they were all unfamiliar faces and seemed to be the residents of the town. Okay, I'll listen to you. Although Hongzhu did not know why Xiao Chen was able to sense the commotion from so far away, in this unknown environment, she had a natural sense of trust towards Xiao Chen. Thus, she obediently nodded her head. After the two had come to a decision, they carefully approached the east. After walking for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a small town appeared in front of them. Although the size of this town could not be considered large, it was quite lively with people coming and going. It looked a bit similar to a market in the secular world, except that the people inside were all dressed in ancient clothes. Xiao Qin and Hongzhu glanced at each other, before stepping into the town as if nothing had happened. Pretending to be leisurely strolling on the streets, they stealthily observed the situation around them. After entering the town, Xiao Qin did not dare to be too ostentatious. He could sense that there were quite a few cultivators in the vicinity, so he did not choose to release his divine sense to investigate. Although the surrounding cultivators did not seem to have a high level, once they reached the level of Xiao Qin, their vitality would be restrained and they would return to their natural state. Generally, one would not be able to see their true level. After all, Xiao Qin didn't know much about the situation here, so he didn't want to overestimate himself. If he alarmed an almighty who was stronger than him, it wouldn't be worth it. Take a look, take a look. You won't suffer a loss with 2 crystals and you won't be fooled with just 2 crystals. Before the two of them had taken a few steps, they heard a peddler's voice coming from the street not far away. Judging from the tone of the voice, it seemed to be the voice of a hawker. I didn't expect this place to be so similar to the secular world. They even use such old-fashioned advertising words. Hongzhu was instantly amused and his nervousness was greatly alleviated. With a smile he teased, "Next I'll definitely sell all of the items in my shop for 2 spirit crystals. It'll be a true value for money, and there won't be another shop like this, right?" Xiao Chen smiled, but before he could answer, the peddler continued to shout, "You can't buy anything with 2 crystals. All the items in your shop start at 3 crystals. Don't miss this opportunity. If you buy it, you'll be taking advantage of it, and if you don't, you'll be suffering a great loss." Oh, what the hell is this? What happened to the trust between people? Hongzhu staggered and almost fell to the ground. He suddenly felt unwell. Why didn't this guy follow the rules? Could it be that all the peddlers in the cultivation world are weirdos? Perhaps this is their style. It's better for you to get used to it as soon as possible. Xiao Qin smiled and shook his head. He was also somewhat speechless towards this peddler. Forget it, he's just a peddler, I don't feel like arguing with him. Hongzhu lightly snorted and then asked with some doubt, "But what are the spirit crystals he mentioned? What are they?" When Xiao Qin heard this term he was also somewhat puzzled. But since Hongzhu had asked, he waved his hand and said, "Don't ask me, it's also my first time here. In any case we have nothing to do for the time being, so we might as well go and take a look." Xiao Qin was also quite interested in the spirit crystals that the peddler was talking about. Could it be that the cultivation world didn't use the currency of the secular world, and instead used spirit crystals as payment? If that was really the case, he had to find a way to obtain some spirit crystals and carry them with him. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to even take a single step. 2 handsome men and beautiful women, please feel free to look around. These goods just arrived yesterday and the quality is excellent. There's absolutely nothing to complain about. If you buy more, I can even give you a discounted price. Seeing Xiao Qin and Hongzhu walking over from a short distance away, the peddler immediately stood up and greeted them enthusiastically. "Little brother, we don't have any spirit crystals. We just wanted to ask." Hongzhu shook his head with a smile. Just as he was about to ask what exactly spirit crystals were, he was interrupted by the vendor before he could finish his question. "It doesn't matter if you don't have any spirit crystals. I support the exchange method with spirit crystal certificates, or you can use spirit crystal cards to directly transfer money. You can choose whatever you want," the peddler said impatiently. Then he made a knowing expression and sighed, "Indeed, no one likes to carry spirit crystals around these days. Those things are too heavy. It's really not as convenient as small cards, I understand." Hongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. The peddler probably thought that they didn't bring any spirit crystals with them, so he wanted to use other payment methods. That was why he introduced so many payment methods in one go. But he didn't have any spirit crystal cards. While Hongzhu and the peddler were talking, Xiaochen took a look at the goods on display. He discovered that they were all unknown herbs and some daily necessities. Perhaps because the spirit chi of heaven and earth was relatively abundant in the cultivation world, many of the herbs seemed to be of good quality even though their grades were relatively low. Seeing that Hongzhu didn't get anything out of the peddler, Xiaochen explained, "Oh, we're not here to buy anything. We just want to understand." The peddler stared at Xiaochen for a moment. Before he could finish speaking, he immediately put on a look of sudden realization and said in a low voice, "Oh, I understand. You're short on spirit crystals, right?" Xiaochen was startled. Thinking that what the peddler said was not wrong, he nodded. "You should have said so earlier." The peddler patted Xiaochen's shoulder in a very familiar manner. He carefully looked left and right, then approached Xiaochen and said in a low voice, "I can help you apply for a small loan or mortgage. If you want to sell a kidney or other organs, I can also introduce you. But you'll have to pay a small fee first. As you know, I've been very strict recently." Chapter 13:21. Holy sh*T, you really can do any kind of business. It seems that no matter who comes to your place, they can't leave without paying a bit of money, right? Xiaochen was so surprised that he couldn't close his mouth and couldn't help but blurt out. He couldn't believe that an ordinary peddler could actually have so many connections. It turned out that this was just a shell company. Hey, how can you say that? Do you know how to chat? You don't have spirit crystals and yet you're so poor and arrogant. What's there to be arrogant about? Are you in the right or something? Hearing Xiaochen's words, the peddler suddenly became anxious. He widened his eyes and pointed at Xiaochen's nose as he scolded. "Forget it, Xiaochen, let's go somewhere else and ask. Don't bicker with him." Seeing that the two were about to quarrel, Hongzhu was afraid that the matter would escalate and become difficult to resolve. After all, they were currently in the cultivation world and were unfamiliar with the people and the place. So he hurriedly pulled Xiaochen away. "Tisich, you don't have money and yet you're asking all sorts of questions. What a waste of my saliva." Looking at the two disappearing figures, the peddler rolled his eyes and cursed a few times. He couldn't be bothered to bicker with them and continued to loudly hawk his wares. After walking for a while, Hongzhu felt a bit hungry. However, he didn't have any spirit crystals on him. So, he could only rub his stomach and stare at the stalls selling steamed buns and sesame seed cakes on the side of the road in an attempt to quench his thirst. Seeing Hongzhu's pitiful appearance, Xiaochen helplessly smiled. He pointed at a nearby restaurant and said, "Let's just go in and eat something. We can also find out what spirit crystals are while we're at it. Maybe that restaurant accepts money from the secular world?" Then, all right. Let's go in and take a look. Although Hongzhu didn't hold much hope in his heart, he had no other choice but to give it a try. So he obediently followed Xiaochen into the restaurant. "Two guests, please come in. Are you here for a meal or to stay?" The boss behind the counter was a middle-aged woman, and she looked quite familiar. Seeing that there were customers, she immediately ordered the waiter to pour 2 cups of hot tea. "Hello, lady boss. It's our first time here and we're not familiar with the situation here. That's why we wanted to ask you about something." Xiaochen cupped his fists and bowed. "What is it? Ask away. I'll tell you if I know." The lady boss had good self-restraint. Seeing that Xiaochen and the others were not here to eat, she did not get angry. Instead, she spoke politely. Xiaochen nodded and asked with a smile, "I heard that this place uses something called spirit crystals as currency to buy things. However, we only have ordinary banknotes on us now, so I'd like to ask if we can use them to pay the bill." "Alright, you can also pay by card." In order to show that he didn't have any spirit crystals on him, Xiaochen took out a stack of money from the secular world and a bank card. However, he had also set up a bank card in the secular world. The lady boss took Xiaochen's money in surprise and carefully looked at it. She shook her head and looked at the bank card in Xiaochen's hand. She frowned and said, "You two are from out of town, right? I've never seen this kind of paper before. Also, this card looks different from our spirit crystal cards, so it shouldn't be useful." The lady boss returned the 100 banknotes to Xiaochen and sighed awkwardly, indicating that she couldn't help even if she wanted to. After thinking for a while, Xiaochen asked, "I see. Then may I ask what exactly is this spirit crystal?" "As for the spirit crystal," The lady boss hesitated for a moment and carefully looked at Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu. She felt that the two of them were indeed outsiders. It just so happened that someone was paying with spirit crystals at this time. She took the spirit crystal and raised it in her hand, indicating to Xiao Chen, "Look, this is spirit crystal. It's actually quite common." "What? Isn't this spirit jade?" Hong Zhu exclaimed in a low voice as he stared at the spirit crystal in the lady boss's hand. He then lowered his head and dejectedly muttered, "If I knew that this place was the same as the inner martial world and could use spirit jade as currency, I would have brought some with me." Xiao Chen took a closer look and realized that the so-called spirit crystal was indeed spirit jade. However, it looked more refined and pure, as if it had been carefully forged and polished. It was not quite the same as the ordinary spirit jade in the inner martial world. Instead, it was more similar to the high-grade spirit jade that had been refined in the Jia clan's heavenly jade mine. However, although Xiao Chen had the backing of the Jia clan, a wealthy spirit jade clan, he had entered the cultivation world empty-handed this time. He didn't bring any spirit jade with him. Previously, Xiao Chen had been busy preparing for the sacrificial ceremony and selecting people, so he hadn't considered the issue of what currency was used in the cultivation world. Otherwise, he might have brought a few pieces with him and wouldn't have come empty-handed. In the end, he couldn't do anything now. "Lady boss, did you leave a private room for this young master? Hurry up and serve the good wine and dishes. Today this young master wants to entertain an important guest." Just as Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu were feeling gloomy, a young man suddenly shouted from behind them. His tone was quite high-pitched, so he should be a regular customer of this restaurant. Young Master Zhao, you've come." The lady boss immediately put on a smile and called out in a loud voice, "Everything has been prepared for you. Moreover, we know that you have an important guest today, so we specially arranged for the purple air from the east private room on the second floor. Please come in, I'll have the waiter serve the dishes for you." The person who had come was obviously a rich man. Just from the lady boss tone and the name of the private room, one could tell that the cost would definitely not be low. Well done." Young Master Zhao nodded his head in satisfaction. He was just about to call for a black-robed old man and a few subordinates behind him to go up the stairs when he turned his head and discovered Hong Zhu standing at the side. He immediately stopped in his tracks and stared blankly, unable to move for a long time. Young Master Zhao carefully sized up Hong Zhu, and the more he looked, the more he felt his heart itch. He looked at that plump and perky chest, that not only was it exquisite and charming, but it was also extremely flirtatious. Every move she made was dazzling. Just that pair of fair and slender legs alone was enough for him to play with for a year. Young Master Zhao's saliva almost flowed out of his mouth. This girl was simply the best. How come he had never seen her before? Hong Zhu felt extremely uncomfortable under young Master Zhao's lecherous gaze and could not help but glare at him, angrily scolding, "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beauty before? Believe it or not, I'll dig out your eyeballs and feed them to the dogs." Although Hong Zhu had cultivated the charm technique, she was still quite disgusted by this kind of swine who was like a housefly. If not for the fact that it was a mission, she would not have been willing to casually use the charm technique on other men. "Haha, you've got quite a hot temper, but this young master likes hot chili peppers like you." Young Master Zhao excitedly raised his eyebrows, approaching Hong Zhu and vigorously sniffing the fragrance on her body, an intoxicated expression on his face. Chapter 1322. Are you trying to be cheap? Scram back to where you came from. Big sister doesn't have time to play games with a yellow-haired brat like you. Hong Zhu immediately took a step back, putting some distance between her and young Master Zhao as she berated him with a look of disgust. Young Master Zhao didn't seem to mind Hong Zhu's disgust in the slightest. Still wearing a seductive expression, he said with a lewd smile, "Little girl, don't say that. Are you interested in having a meal with this young master? This young master promises that he won't treat you unfairly. My woman has no interest in having a meal with you. Go do what you need to do." Xiao Chen said coldly from the side before pulling Hong Zhu's hand and preparing to leave the restaurant. Although Xiao Chen wasn't too interested in Hong Zhu's usual teasing, she was still his friend after all. Naturally, Xiao Chen wouldn't just stand by and watch as she was bullied. This young Master Zhao also didn't seem to be a good person. Adhering to the principle that it was better to avoid trouble, Xiao Chen planned to directly leave the restaurant and toss this annoying fly to the back of his mind. "Wait!" Young Master Zhao shouted and waved his hand. His subordinates immediately surrounded Xiao Qin and Hong Zhu, blocking their path. What do you mean? Xiao Qin frowned and asked in a low voice. He was already in a bad mood. If this was the inner martial world or the secular world, he would have long since slapped this good-for-nothing young master who had appeared out of nowhere to death. If it weren't for the fact that he had just arrived in the cultivation world and was completely ignorant of the situation here, how could this guy have the chance to jump around? Without understanding the other party's background and strength, Xiao Qin naturally couldn't choose to act rashly. Nothing much, I just wanted to tell you that you can get lost now. However, this little girl must stay and accompany this young master to have some fun. Although young Master Zhao's tone sounded light and indifferent, his lofty and indisputable attitude was completely revealed. In his opinion, Xiao Qin was nothing more than an unremarkable fellow. Being together with such a beautiful little girl was simply a reckless waste of God's gift. Instead of crippling him, he allowed him to leave on his own. This was already giving him a lot of face. Do you think I'll stay just because you said so? What if I don't agree? Xiao Qin's expression didn't change, but his heart was already angry. This kind of overbearing and despotic second-rate playboy actually dared to climb all over him? At this time, Xiao Qin already had the intention to kill. At worst, he could directly kill this fool and then use the flying sword to escape. Anyway, with the speed of the flying sword, these people should not be able to catch up in a short time. Oh, you actually dare to challenge this young master? Zhao Wending's face revealed an incredulous expression. He snorted coldly and said, "Originally, I didn't want to let you go, you stinking brat. But now, it seems that if I don't teach you a good lesson and teach you a lesson, you won't know how powerful I, Zhao Wending, am." After saying that, Zhao Wending immediately activated his Heart Sutra and revealed his cultivation. His cold eyes swept over Xiao Qin. His expression was as if he was looking at an ant that was about to be crushed to death by him. The lady boss had already hidden far away. Her face was full of worry as she looked over here. The customers who were originally eating in the restaurant also noticed the movement here. Many people put down their bowls and chopsticks, holding the mentality of watching a good show. Seeing Xiao Qin and Zhao Wending standing face to face, many people looked at Xiao Qin with a trace of pity in their eyes. But no one was willing to speak up for him. It could be seen that Zhao Wending did indeed have some power in this small town. Xiao Qin vigorously rubbed his eyes and looked at Zhao Wending in disbelief. He once thought that he had seen wrong or that there was a problem with his senses. But when he confirmed again, he found that Zhao Wending's cultivation was still the same as before. At this moment, Zhao Wending, who was standing in front of Xiao Qin, was actually emitting an aura of a cultivation of the 6th level of Qi refining stage. Xiao Qin blankly looked at Zhao Wending. Could it be that this guy had deliberately suppressed his strength in order to confuse me and make me have an illusion? But Xiao Qin carefully thought about it again. For a brainless hedonistic son of rich parents like Zhao Wending, and looking at the servants and bodyguards behind him, he reckoned that he had the backing of his family. Zhao Wending shouldn't be able to use a high-level method like attacking something with a feint. This 6th level of Qi refining stage was most likely his true strength. This time Xiao Qin was really confused. Holy sh*T, with just this little bit of strength, he dared to come out and act cool? If I casually rewarded him with a head, and it was the kind where I had to control my strength, this brat would probably have to lie at home and recuperate for half a year. What kind of joke is this? Is this really the world of cultivators? Or have I and Hong Zhu been sent to some strange place? Could it be that I and Hong Zhu have been sent to some strange place? Isn't this nonsense? At this time, Hong Zhu was also staring at Zhao Wending with a strange expression. Although she wasn't a true cultivator and couldn't see through Zhao Wending's strength, judging from his aura, this guy's strength didn't seem to be much higher than hers. Hey, do you know fear now? Seeing Xiao Qin's stupefied appearance, Zhao Wending thought that he had been scared silly by the strength he had displayed. He became even more insufferably arrogant as he said with a face full of arrogance, "If you kneel down right now, properly kowtow to this young master a few times, sincerely apologize, then leave behind the little girl beside you and quickly scram, then I'll forgive you for the time being." Without waiting for Zhao Wending to finish speaking, Xiao Qin yawned and impatiently interrupted him, "Spare my dog life for the time being, right? I'm already tired of hearing this kind of saying. Every time I meet some idiot who thinks he's in love, they always say the same thing. Do you have any other fresh words?" What did you say?" Zhao Wending's words were stuck in his throat. When he heard Xiao Qin actually say such words, He thought he had misheard and couldn't help but ask in astonishment. I said that you're extremely cliché. Xiao Qin snorted disdainfully at Zhao Wendeng and said, moreover, your cultivation is so low, yet you still have the nerve to come out and make a fool of yourself? No wonder you have so many subordinates by your side, it's so that it's convenient for them to collect your corpse, right? Damn it, stinking brat, you still dare to be so stubborn? This young master will make you die without a burial place today. Zhao Wendeng was instantly enraged. His aura skyrocketed, and just as he was about to rush forward and kill Xiao Qin, he suddenly felt someone pat his shoulder. Young Master Deng, such a small matter isn't worthy of you personally taking action. Let this old man do it for you. The black-robed elder who had been observing from the side patted Zhao Wendeng's shoulder and blocked his way, staring at Xiao Qin as he spoke in a deep voice. Chapter 1323. Xiao Qin guessed that the old man was probably young Master Deng's chief bodyguard or something. Now that things had gotten out of hand, he naturally couldn't just stand there and pretend not to see anything. However, he didn't know how strong this guy was. Oh, all right then. Thank you, Senior Feng. Zhao Wendeng was slightly stunned. He hesitated for a moment before nodding his head in agreement. He was so impulsive just now that he almost forgot that he was bringing Senior Feng here for a meal. Senior Feng was a bodyguard that his father had specially hired with a lot of money. Therefore, Zhao Wendeng had planned to give him a welcoming dinner. He didn't expect to meet this exquisite girl before he even had a meal. Zhao Wendeng originally wanted to show off in front of the girl, but it turned out that Senior Feng was going to take action on his behalf. It seemed that his wish would be dashed. However, Zhao Wendeng changed his mind. It was actually quite good to let Senior Feng take action. This way, not only would it save him the trouble of doing it himself, but he could also use him to display the Zhao family's strength. Perhaps that girl would fall in love with him when she saw how strong his bodyguard was? The black-robed old man had a cold smile on his face. He took out a talisman from his pocket and gently pinched it between the fingertips of his left hand. Then he pushed his right hand forward. The talisman immediately stood up and was wrapped in crimson flames. Throughout the entire process, Xiao Qin stared at the old man's movements with great interest. It seemed that he was trying to figure out what was so awesome about the talisman. After the talisman started burning, the black-robed old man's body began to emit waves of pressure. He then narrowed his eyes at Xiao Qin and shouted, "Kid, show me your magic weapon. I never kill unarmed people. Looks like my luck is pretty good. I've really been sent to the newbie village." When Xiao Qin heard the old man's challenge, he shrugged in boredom and said casually. Although the black-robed old man in front of him looked very imposing, the cultivation that he revealed was only at the first level of the foundation establishment stage. He wasn't much stronger than that arrogant hedonistic young master. "What village? Stop wasting time over there, hurry up and give me." The black-robed old man thought that Xiao Qin was deliberately talking about something he didn't understand, so he immediately snorted coldly. However, before the black-robed old man could finish his words, Xiao Qin's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of him. Xiao Qin then swung his arm and slapped him. He did not forget to add, "Since you are so eager to die, I will fulfill your wish." "What? The black-robed old man only saw a figure flash in front of him. Before he could catch a glimpse of Xiao Qin's figure, he was slapped hard in the face. The cold smile on his face instantly froze. With a loud bang, the black-robed old man flew out of the restaurant and crashed into several thick walls nearby. He was directly covered in dust and disappeared without a trace. Xiao Qin swung his arm and curled his lips in boredom. Too weak. It's like killing a newbie in a beginner's village. There's no sense of accomplishment at all. So boring. You. Zhao Wendeng looked at the scene in front of him, dumbfounded. He was speechless for a while. Looking at the dumbfounded Zhao Wendeng, Xiao Qin scratched his head and asked, "Your name is Zhao? What's it again?" "Forget it, it doesn't matter. I will give you two choices now. First, leave your spiritual crystals and get lost with your subordinates. Second, if you have any objections, you can refer to the first one. Kid, tell me your name if you have the guts." Zhao Wendeng snapped back to reality and said through gritted teeth, "Do you think the Zhao family is so easy to mess with? Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you have some strength. Don't think that you can leave safely after killing the Zhao family. Let me tell you, I will settle this score with you sooner or later." Zhao Wendeng was very depressed at the moment. He thought that Senior Wind could win easily, but he didn't expect him to be sent flying with a single slap. Until now there was no sign of life at all. He was probably dead. Xiaochen was about to speak when a group of people walked down slowly from the second floor. The young man in green who was leading the group had a toothpick in his mouth. He looked over with disdain and mocked, "Yo, isn't this our famous young master Zhao? Why, bringing a few lackeys out to show off again?" Qin Taotian. Looking at the newcomer, Zhao Wendeng gnashed his teeth in anger. The fact that Senior Wind had been sent flying had already made him feel aggrieved and displeased. Never had he thought that another fellow would pop up now to mess things up. "Thank you for letting me win. I didn't know that young Master Zhao was eating here. Otherwise I would definitely come over and offer a toast," the young man in green said eccentrically as he pinched his nose. Then he said with a surprised expression, "Oh right, if I'm not wrong, something seemed to have flown out just now, right? TSK, your Zhao family does have a lot of capable people. I'm really envious." Zhao Wendeng glared at him and warned coldly, "Qin Tao, this has nothing to do with you. I'm warning you, don't King get involved, lest you find trouble for yourself." "Ah, how is it not my business?" The green-clothed man called Qin Taotian spat out the toothpick in his mouth and continued to mock him calmly. "Let me guess, you've taken a fancy to this young hero's female companion and want to bring her back to enjoy with your father, am I right?" "I've taken a fancy to her, it's none of your—" "What did you say?" Zhao Wendeng was about to retort when he suddenly choked and glared at Qin Taotian with a flushed face. When Qin Taotian saw Zhao Wendeng's attitude, he became even more proud of himself. He said slowly, "What I'm saying is, who doesn't know that the Zhao clan has two heroes? Both father and son love to do those despicable things, and they even like to play with each other. Like father, like son. F*ck your grandma's leg. What the F*ck are you talking about? I dare you to say it again." Zhao Wendeng was obviously hit in his soft spot. His expression turned even more terrible, and the veins on his forehead bulged crazily as he shouted loudly. However, because the black-robed old man was sent flying and the few servants behind him did not have high standards, Zhao Wendeng did not dare to make a move even though he was furious. He could only glare and clench his fists tightly as he endured it. The Zhao family has two heroes. Both father and son are despicable, and they like to play with each other. Like father like son indeed. Qin Taotian repeated it 3 times in a row. Then he looked at Zhao Wendeng with a smile and said, "I have to repeat the so-called important things 3 times. Do you understand now? Do you want me to repeat it a few more times for free?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.